Good evening, everybody. This is around about an hour after I normally want to stop streaming, so it's definitely a late start tonight. I don't think it's realistic for me to say that I will be able to do a full 3-hour broadcast tonight. Excuse me. We'll see how far we can make it, but basically, the transit system's getting a bit inconsistent with the for the uh, it might just be a late night thing, but one way or the other, I really wish Twitch would stop trying to sell me Discord. But yeah, anyways, I basically just got home after work, and yes, I was at work later than expected, but I was definitely not expecting this kind of a commute. So I will try and remember that for Wednesday. But I know I missed last week to when just I had an all-nighter basically. So I did want to try and at least, do some kind of a stream tonight, even if it's a shorter one. I was actually debating maybe even a different game because I do hold the illusion that this is still a variety broadcast, even if I'm doing extended periods of Book of Hours. But I like this game, and it's actually a really good one to play at the end of a long day. So I'm gonna hop back into it. You'll just need to give me a minute while I get set up. Excuse me. So this week, I have a couple things left for work in terms of big projects, but the biggest one has sort of finished, and oh, that's right, wait a minute. Okay, excuse me. This is a tough call, actually. So I think Serena is here on the affair of the unfinished Lark. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4 invitations. I may actually need to go and double check the VOD to... Ooh. Sorry, I'm getting a weird indicator on my tablet here. I just want to see what's going on. Okay. More mysteries tonight, but not one that I need to immediately deal with. I think I'm going to take a quick second here on stream, just because I am a little confused by the invitation that I see here. So I'd kind of like to see whether or not I actually sent the invitation for Serena. Okay, so this looks like, yes, okay, so I can see here, so we've got the Affair of the Unfinished Lark ticking away. 20 seconds to go on this. So my guess here, the sorry, the connection for what am I trying to say here? The tray that holds the sundries is a little too low. But yeah, Serena pops in. Someone on route to Hush House, so that's okay. Now I'm going to see if I can find out what's going on with this silly alert that I was getting. Okay. I think I'm actually ready to go. So I do apologize for that. I thought I was ready to go, and then all the other problems came up. So, first question I want to deal with here is I have 4 invitations, but I should have 5 people that I'm bringing in. So I'm curious. So, Olympi, Aladim, Daymare, Wakefield, and Connie, for one reason or another, is not on the list of invites. Okay, and that's because I'm sending an invitation to Connie Lee, which is good to know, actually. So now I'm feeling a little bit better about this. So this indicator to me, the thing that I want to avoid is hello Mel, and sorry for the late start. Especially with my stumbling over all my words at the start. So because I'm bringing in Connie, this tells me that I want to have my elements of the soul ready to go at the start of the day. Now, I don't have to swear off any elements of the soul because I believe I was going to go for a later salon just so I can get the extra memory. In fact, one thing I might try is to go for a bit later in the day just to see what the just to see if there's an extra benefit. Actually, I made a note of this. Let me just take a quick second here. I just don't know if it's on this computer or not. And my desktop is actually resetting right now, so I don't have... Okay. Maybe? Not looking good. Last option that I have here are notes. Problem is I have about 5 different documents of notes. So I do have salon notes. I just don't have... I know there's an extra one that you get for 11sies. I just don't know if you go... I just don't know if you can do this in the evening. Or sorry, not. I know you can do it in the evening. I just don't know if you get anything extra in the evening, is what I mean to say. And I don't like it. I put a note about extras, which doesn't say anything on this note. Like it doesn't put it. It's just kind of, I see a +1, but I don't. That could mean one of a few different things. So, I think I'm going to. I think the answer now is just to experiment. Okay, the postmistress examines a letter and deems it sufficient. It'll go with the next post, she assures me. So, let's also take care of Dr. Serena Blackwood, one-time librarian of Hush House, one-time librarian of the Invisible Serapeum in Alexandria, and currently, what exactly? Serena is close-mouthed, but I know that she has worked with the St. Ronwin Trust. It's always very strange to be back. Thank you again for taking on the place. If there is an incident card active, you can discuss it or just leave the slot, empty and offer consultation. So I should probably read the event that we're doing. For 3 years, the sculptor adept Zuthimalim Zidane has labored at his masterpiece, an abstract sculpture that speaks with the voice of the desert lark. And now, puzzlingly and suddenly, he is dead. Zidane is dead. It's a pity. The man was an artist, and it's concerning. I wonder if the death might not have something to do with his last work. He was already making use of some very unusual alloys, very unusual techniques. I'd like to use the collection to develop some theories further. So in this case, we can go for a 4 or lower forge. Again, I apologize for the distraction, but I do just need to see my upgrade here. I kind of feel like I already did an update for my my OS here, but I just basically do whatever the computer tells me to. So Journal of Walter de Wolf is the most like, nope, there's Van Zandt's Minglings. Also appropriate because of the mention of alloys. I think Zidane might have been using Ys metal in his work. That would upset quite a number of people, from the Bureau on down. Thank you, librarian. I hope I can trust you to keep our conversations confidential. I must remember to invite the kills again at some point. Okay, so again, I want to try and find this balance of making sure that I am not like I'm leaving myself open to more developments during the salon, but I want to. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to max out the elements of the soul. The restoring the elements of the soul, and then I'll see if there are other things that I can do over the course of the day. So, breakfast, second breakfast, Levensies, luncheon, afternoon tea, dinner, or supper. Personally, I am partial to dinner and second breakfast. I thought I saw somebody complaining a bit about the fact that there's a Lord of the Rings reference in the different times for the salons. I thought it's like, this is a game that not only... It's not just that it has references to literature. It actually has references to lots of things, right? So there's a quote from The Wall in it. There's a reference to the electronic musician Aphex Twin. Obviously this is made by a person, so clearly there is a human being who knows all these references all at once. But I think it's fair to say that, Yeah, that's also fair as well. But I don't know. Like I feel like there's enough the love of the. I think it's fair to say that there's enough of a love of of those books that they've got to at least be in mind when they're coming up in um, when they come up in Book of Hours. But you're right. No, it's actually, let's take a quick look. It's always fun to look at this stuff. So this is the trick. I imagine that one of the ways that you can become one of the people who know these things is if you actually do look these up. So let's see if we can find the origin of Elevensies. So Elevensies is a short break taken at around 11 a.m. to consume a drink or a snack. The name and details vary among countries. So a reference to morning tea and little lunch. Okay, so this is a real shame if they don't talk about the origin. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about oranges, origins. Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely other references to second and third breakfasts uh, and elevensies and such. So I'd be, I mean, it makes sense, right? That you have. So I'll confess the concept I had originally. I think probably I'm doing one of two things, which is the first I ever heard of it was through those books. I also am just sort of taking it from the. I probably shouldn't take the complaint at face value that this is just a reference to The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. But anyways, I don't feel. I guess where I was going with all of this is I don't necessarily feel that this kind of reference in the context of a game which is largely about books is out of place. So, although as pointed out, that's probably already granting a bit too much to the claim. I should maybe just double check here that there isn't anything big with winter that I can do, because we do have the snow, although I also have the Wormwood Dream, so then again, sky is a possibility. Sky is not a possibility. All right, then I think I leave it. Actually, I don't. Oops. Wrapped in the Kings, detailed accounts of secret bacchanals and ecstatic dances observed in necropolises and graveyards in southern Europe, in Egypt, and in Anatolia. The author is a self-confessed ghoul, an eater of buried flesh. He claims to have witnessed the dances while at his feasting. The dances draw from the traditions of the mysteries of the cults of Isis and of Sybil, but include both symbolic and literal flayings, and the human heart is always central in the rites. The author punctuates his accounts with queasily sensuous descriptions of his own interrupted feasts. At these greater feasts, a black pig is always crowned as king before its slaying. On this occasion, its heart was weighed in the balance against a knot of feathers, and its skin became a cape for the officiant. Its flesh was left for the crows, but I must confess my interest was not in its carcass, but in the perfumed flesh of the milliner laid fresh in the earth. Okay, so again, I want to be a little careful in terms of how I'm handling my different memories, but if I take the grand piano, I can't put the instrument in place. So I was thinking, having something like the storm and the snow, and then, I wish I had slightly better options here as far as sky goes. So we've got Sights and sensations. Let's just see how far we can get with this. So we've got Ichor Auroral, which doesn't really get me a whole lot in its current form. Watchman's Paradoxes, same deal. Mazarine Fife we already have. Okay, I wouldn't say no to the Ascendant Harmony. I am just a little concerned that I may not have a ton of time to recover it. But I think I'm gonna go... for it. So I have 90 seconds, and then I'll just try and make sure that my timing at the Sweet Bones adjusts accordingly. Alright, a couple more invitations. Stamp, envelope, send. The postmistress examines the letter and deems it sufficient. It'll go with the next post, she assures me. Hello, Sylvia. How you doing? Literary references are some of my favorite things in Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator, but really just media in general. But I find it far more fun to insert your own references as a potential future, and I think as to what they might be. Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I actually really like about this game is that I feel like I get enough. So, like, I'd heard of Thomas Brown before, and I don't think Thomas Brown is one of those figures that like it's just this is not the sort of person who I hear about from other people, and again, that's not a claim of LOL, people don't read the right books, but it's weird because he does seem like a really interesting figure. I mean, I found out about him through most of the interesting figures I find out about Penguin Classics. Or equivalents. I think it was actually is it Great Ideas series? There's the little white books that they put out. I quite like that series. But yeah, I don't know. Like, and then the musician, the Cornwall references, it doesn't quote Richard D. James. It quotes, sorry, it doesn't quote Aphex Twin. It quotes Richard D. James, but it's obviously an Aphex Twin quote. Now, that's not a literary reference, but it fits. And then, of course, I assume that there's a bunch that I'm not familiar with. Like, I'd be lying if I said I knew that Ibn al-Adim was a biographer. I think it was biographer. Definitely a historian of some kind. Prior to the game, but I'm pretty sure so this is one that kind of caught my attention. This is actually one of the reasons why I like play. So I don't watch a lot of people play Book of Hours, but I really like watching. I'm pretty sure it's the High Traditions of Noble Endeavor. It's because Oswin Miao was reading this, and you have the different heroic names mentioned, so like Roland, Song of Roland, and so on and so forth, and she was intrigued by the name Breadbettle, which, to my understanding, this one's a little unfair just because I really liked this. I remember liking this book when I first heard it when I was a kid, and then I got to actually do it in an English literature course. So just a first-year course. It's nothing super sophisticated. I also need to understand that one of the people who made this game, I believe, has a degree in English literature from Oxford, so I feel like that's a level of expertise that I will not even remotely get close to. But the reference to Breadbettle, I believe, is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I believe that's the name of the Green Knight, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, just one of those things that it's a name that's rattling around in the back of my head. I don't hear of it that often, but it's just one of those things that when it comes up, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's fair. Incidentally, the reason I mentioned Thomas Brown, for those not familiar, there's Life is a Pure Flame, and we live by an invisible sun within us, Thomas Brown. And then there is the book which references Thomas Brown's shadow, who refers, I believe, time. They alter the phrase for time. But, you know, again, so that some of this is fun because on the one hand, this is the big advantage to me. So there's two... Actually, you know what? Sorry, I know I've taken a while to... Wow. I really didn't know what I was planning today because I've committed myself to using up a few elements of the soul. Anyways, we're committed now. I've read this before, but I actually think it's worth reading again. Sorry, I'm having a little more trouble finding... I'm actually quite surprised I'm having trouble finding this now. This used to be... Ah. That's why it looks like this site may be down. Let me see if the Wayback Machine is up. Okay. Yeah, so this is published by Jill Russell. So the blog was called Strife Blog, but it does seem that the link isn't working right now. So I'll just read Russell's words. So this was May 7th, 2013. So the introductory material here is Jill Russell speaking. In late 2003, a colleague of General James Mattis wrote to him asking for a few words on the importance of reading and military history for the officer, even where it might seem that one was, quote, too busy to read, end quote. His response went viral over email. Had it been in the time of Twitter, this blog piece would be unnecessary, but it enjoyed a wide distribution within the Marine Corps and eventually arrived in my inbox. As a military historian, I cannot minimize my appreciation that he wrote so eloquently on the subject. If it were only that, the essay would be valuable. But his writing is valuable also because we rarely have opportunities to hear the unfiltered thoughts of leaders as well for his role in the history of recent conflicts. Much is written and believed to be known about the general as a warrior. Less is known about him as a true student of his profession. I would submit that it is quite impossible to correctly understand the former without a proper interrogation of the latter. By this I mean one must first accept that a significant body of intellectual material sustains his actions and opinions, as indicated in the messages. He devotes real effort towards this aspect of his work. So there is a base of knowledge that is always growing. On top of that, there are benefits which accrue to those who think and critically engage with such material. Furthermore, there is his consideration of the views of others, as in the breadth of his reading or response to my comments, suggesting that he has not fallen prey to the hubris of the powerful, which is to believe that they have all the answers. Good leaders don't only hear yes from the people around them. Thus, the insight these words give to his thinking and interests is invaluable. I also have to note that from a historian's perspective, the professional practice is fascinating. It is Hegel hurled at the maelstrom of Emergent Clio, a manifestation of E.H. Carr's unending dialogue between past and present. There's an awful popular tendency to try and use history prescriptively. This is a bad idea. Very often the lessons relied upon are incorrect or inappropriate. However, history, from quality works, as a critical thinking process whose substance also furthers understanding of regions, types of events, etc., can inform posterity to good effect. The General's essay is an exposition of this principle. Published with his permission, I would like to make perfectly clear that the excerpt where I want to make perfectly clear that except where I excise personal details regarding his correspondent, these messages are as he wrote them. I have, according to the current practice in the historical community, left them as they were in the originals. If there is shorthand, abbreviations, or minor errors, they reflect the reality that these were originally private correspondence. It was not the General's expectation at the time that they would be made public. In return for the odd aesthetic wobble, what you get is a rare insight into the thinking of a general officer, as experienced and battle-tested commanding officer, on how he thinks about materials and issues critically important to his profession by virtue of the public nature of his profession, posterity. Finally, note here that these messages were written in the months leading up to his deployment in Iraq in command of 1 MEF. I'm sorry, I don't know that off hand. Let me see that. Oh, the Marine Expeditionary Force. In February of 2004. So, sorry about the big lead up to this, but this is the essay that I wanted to read. Message 1 from James Mattis on the matter of professional reading, 20 November 2003. And this is the first part has been snipped off. The problem with being too busy to read is that you learn by experience, or by your men's experience, i.e. the hard way. By reading, you learn through others' experiences, generally a better way to do business, especially in our line of work where the consequences of incompetence are so final for young men. Thanks to my reading, I have never been caught flat-footed by any situation, never at a loss for how any problem has been addressed, successfully or unsuccessfully before. It doesn't give me all the answers, but it lights what is often a dark path ahead. With TF-58, I had with me Slim's books about the Russian and British experiences in Afghanistan, or AFG, and a couple of others. Going into Iraq, The Siege, about the Brits' defeat at Al Qut in World War I, was required reading for field-grade officers. I also had Slim's book, reviewed T. Lawrence's 7 Pillars of Wisdom, a good book about the life of Gertrude Bell, the Brit archaeologist who virtually founded the modern Iraq state after the aftermath of World War I and the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and From Beirut to Jerusalem. I also went deeply into Little Hart's book on Sherman, and Fuller's book on Alexander the Great got a lot of my attention, although I never imagined my HQ would only end up 500 meters from where he lay in state in Babylon. Ultimately, a real understanding of history means that we face nothing new under the sun. For all the fourth generation of war intellectuals running around today and saying that the nature of war has fundamentally changed, the tactics are wholly new, etc., I must respectfully say, not really. Alex the Great would not be in the least bit perplexed by the enemy that we face right now in Iraq, and our leaders going into this fight do their troops a disservice by not studying, vice just reading, the men who have gone before us. We've been fighting on this planet for 5,000 years, and we should take advantage of their experience. Winging it and filling body bags as we sort out what works reminds us of the moral dictates and the cost of incompetence in our profession. As commanders and staff officers, we are coaches and sentries for our units. How can we coach anything if we don't know a hell of a lot more than just the TTPs? What happens when you're on a dynamic battlefield and things are changing faster than higher HQ can stay abreast? Do you not adapt because you cannot conceptualize faster than the enemy's adaptation? Darwin has a pretty good theory about the outcome for those who cannot adapt to changing circumstance. In the information age, things can change rather abruptly and at warp speed, especially the moral high ground, which our regimented thinkers cede far too quickly in our recent fights. And how can you be a sentinel and not have your unit caught flat-footed if you don't know what the warning signs are, that your unit's preps are not sufficient for the specifics of a tasking that you have not anticipated? Perhaps if you are in support functions, waiting on the warfighters to spell out the specifics of what they are to do, you can avoid the consequences of not reading. Those who must adapt to overcoming an independent enemy's will are not allowed that luxury. This is not new to the USMC approach to warfighting. Going to Kuwait 12 years ago, I read and reread Rommel's papers. Remember Kampfstaffel? Montgomery's book, Eyes Officers, Grant Takes Command. Need for commanders to get along, commanders' relationships being more important than command relationships, and some others. As a result, the enemy has paid when I had the opportunity to go against them, and I believe that many of my young guys lived because I didn't waste their lives because I didn't have the vision in my mind of how to destroy the enemy at least cost to our guys and to the innocents on the battlefield. Hope this answers your question. I will CC my ADC in the event that he can add to this. He is the only officer I know who has read more than I. Semper Fi, Mattis. I will just briefly add here Jill Russell's correspondence with him. There's 2 following emails on this, and then we'll unpack it. Message 2 from Jill Russell to General Mattis, 26 November 2003. Sir, your message to the Colonel was forwarded to me by a colleague. As I am a military historian, he knew that I would appreciate its content. I offer here a response to one portion of your message, which taken as a whole was an eloquent statement on the value of as eloquent a statement on the value of history as I've come across. You wrote, quote, for all the 4th generation war intellectuals running around today saying that the nature of war has fundamentally changed, the tactics are wholly new, etc., I must respectfully say, not really, end quote. I would submit that 4th generation war thinkers do not issue the study of military history. If you take Van Crieveld's On Future War, for example, an example of the genre, his entire case is based on an examination of aspects of war across the full span of military history. Take his example of his treatment, the changing ideas about prisoners of war, who were at one time in history allowed parole to travel home to collect a ransom payment. If there is any concern amongst 4th generation war thinkers regarding the use of military history to inform current thoughts on military affairs, it is directed at the dead hand of recent operational and strategic history where past successes and dominance are used to define the future, even if the future of warfare seems headed elsewhere. If I were going into Iraq in the winter of 2004, I might include a few books on the CAP and Evans Carlson. It's a pity that the new bio of him will not be out in time. I think of these not because they are particularly or specifically prescriptive for the current situation, but rather as examples of Marines in history who looked at a situation and arrived at an answer that differed from the standard. Are the donkeys a sign of genius rather than weakness? That each of these unorthodox answers turned out to be correct in many respects is gravy. Also, Evans Carlson was himself an avid reader, bringing many varied volumes with him on his travels throughout China during 1937/8. My favorite amongst his selections was The Education of Henry Adams. Of course, I would be more than just curious to hear your selections. Best wishes for a very happy Thanksgiving to you and your Marines, VR Jill Sergeant Russell. And the final message in the thread, message 3 from General Mattis to Jill Russell, 26 November 2003. Dear Miss Russell, thank you for taking the time to write. I quickly scratched my note off to the Colonel in response to a question and regret if my comments about 4th generation of warfare stuff touched a wrong nerve on some folks. I did not intend it personally or to anyone who studies war. I have a problem with those who carry an ahistorical view of war into acceptance of the latest bumper sticker. War in its various permutations is not new to me, and some folks have glommed onto 4th generation of war concepts to say everything is new, history has little, no, place anymore because of how different things are, etc. I regret any misunderstanding that my hastily written note has caused, wholly my responsibility. That said, I appreciate your reading suggestions. Obviously, you don't triangulate using bumper stickers. My own list changes from mission to mission, location to location, etc., and perhaps one day we can shoot the breeze about good books. My best new ideas, of course, come from the old books, which are a passion with me. Until then, I am happy to know that we have folks like you studying military history, engaged in deciphering what is going on from an unregimented, intellectually rigorous perspective. With best wishes and Semper Fi, Mattis. So this last little bit here isn't really relevant to the question of reading, and I think it's fair to say that I don't know everybody's background in terms of people who are watching the stream, but I think it would be fair to say that most people are not going to be encountering the kinds of situations that General Mattis did, right? We don't need to read books because we have the highest possible stakes. for failing to do so. But I do think it's quite often that we'll run into this situation where we say, I just wish I had more time for reading, or or maybe not even the I wish, maybe it's just I don't have time for reading, or I never want people to feel small because of an opinion on things like audiobooks. I think I do listen to audiobooks too on occasion, and I don't think they're the devil or anything like that. But I do also tend to notice that the tendency to listen to audiobooks, one, is a substitute for reading, and two, it's because it enables other activities while you are listening. And of course, that isn't quite the same as reading a book and really taking in its ideas, right? This is the illusion of multitasking. So, and again, that's not to say that people who like audiobooks, shame on them for doing that, or, you shouldn't listen to audiobooks or whatever. Clearly, you don't go to streams for opinions on how to spend your free time. But it's just one of these cases where it's very easy for us to get this impression that we don't have the time to read. But on the other hand, we all have the same 24 hours, and often people with busy and important jobs are the same people who wind up getting some reading. Perhaps there is some kind of relationship between these two things. So in one sense, it's a very practical benefit to reading, right? You don't necessarily have to be a general, but a certain type of reading on certain subjects is just going to make you better at the stuff that you do, whether it's, how you earn a living, maybe it's your hobbies, right? A lot of us have to cook, and if you don't cook, you need to have a job that allows you to order in a whole lot. It's very difficult for me to imagine situations where you cannot improve your station through reading. And this is also true. I mean, this is as old as Andrew Carnegie. I mentioned this specifically because Andrew Carnegie is responsible for the library that I most regularly go to. There is still a portrait of him because he didn't just limit his philanthropy to the United States. There were actually some parts of Canada that he extended his philanthropy to, and libraries were a big part of that. He had the idea that libraries are places where people can go to better themselves, which for him was going to be the engine of a degree of social mobility. I don't really think he's wrong to think that, although I know there is a tendency to maybe undermine or downplay what reading can accomplish along those lines. So the Mattis essay is one part of that, and that obviously lends itself towards the old books that he likes. I like old books, so obviously I'm going to be fond of that particular essay or email or whatever you want to call it. And then the other half to the equation, so that basically the practical benefit, right? I think most of us have some kind of work that we do, whether it's for money or whether it's for our passions, where reading and familiarity has a very direct benefit in terms of our ability to just handle things and get through life. The other half of the equation for me definitely lends itself to usually the more fictional side of things, but it doesn't have to be. And this is just the simple fact that you get to enjoy more things. When you have knowledge of certain topics, when you have knowledge of, references and, different books, sometimes different shows, music. And again, ideally a broad range because, what's most popular and where all the interesting works are being made usually aren't within one genre or one author or one region. But it just simply makes everything more interesting. So a good example of this would be, I don't find it that hard to accept that, I wouldn't probably volunteer. Sunday school wasn't the worst thing for me because I do enjoy Old English literature. And obviously for such a large part of English literature, there is sort of this expectation that you are familiar with the contents of the Bible, right? There will be certain references to the stories inside of it. And also, likewise, my interest in classics. So, if you have read Ovid and you read Shakespeare, that's going to be a different experience from just reading Shakespeare on its own. Paradise Lost, if you are unfamiliar with, even the broad context of contents of the Bible, is not going to quite be the same as if you do. And likewise, if you read Moby Dick, right? You probably get a little bit more out of Moby Dick if you read Paradise Lost, because it really does feel like Melville read the hell out of Paradise Lost, so to speak. And there can be another side to this, which is, what Malmal's talking about. I'm finally getting back to it when it says literary references are some of my favorite things in Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator, but really just media in general. But I find it more fun to insert your own references as potential future and think as to what they might be. So it's, I don't know, I just sort of feel if you have this nice broad field of topics and subjects to draw from, these are the things where either you notice something and you pick up on it. You've got this little hook and it takes you down an interesting path. Or, even sometimes if you're looking at something that isn't very good, or maybe it's not very consistent, it does give you the opportunity to just sort of run off on a train of thought. I will often find that, interesting trains of thought are more likely to show up in the situations where I've been reading more. I've just got a bit more inside my head than those times when sort of I've just been playing, I don't know, like RimWorld, for a day, and I haven't thought of anything other than how to build a good base. I just started playing RimWorld this weekend, and I definitely spent too much time playing it. But anyways, I don't know if that made any sense or if that was worth the long amount of time that I spent on it, but it is one of the things. So it's definitely one on this one. It's twofold, where it's fun to see things that I might already be familiar with, but also to have just enough. I think the one thing that I like about it is that there's just enough that I'm familiar with that I know to look when there are things I'm unfamiliar with, and I don't know. I guess the other thing is that there's obviously enough writing in this. I think there was I can't remember if it was an interview or a blog or whatever it was, probably a blog on the Weather Factory site. But the idea of writing something that means something when you first read it, something that will continue to have meaning, or something that can be unpacked on, the third or fourth reading, but still be able to also write in such a way that people can play the game a few years later and realize, oh, wait a minute, that's what that was talking about. Like, I actually don't know how the game does this. I know it does because there's definitely things that I've sort of realized on subsequent readings of things. But it's really interesting to know that it's doing that without being able to specifically point out, oh, this is exactly how they pulled it off. Anyways, I'm going to get some more material done. So, Medusa's lament on the death of the hour called Seven Coils, the father of the mother. The first part of the poem describes the ambush of the Seven Coils by a warrior scarred all over by the traitor gods, scarred even unto his eyes, so that the sight of the great coils would not destroy him. The battle rages on until the Seven Coils drowns in its own blood, at which point the narrative turns mystical and elusive. A seven-titled goddess arises from the foam of its blood. She is an armored queen, a serpent daughter, a key, a healer, a murderess, an oracle, but her seventh title is not to be revealed. So we have fear and two horns of ivories. Now I forgot what I was going to put that towards, but let's at least shelve the fear. And we are out of space. Okay. I suppose inevitably this point was going to come, but I didn't really think... I didn't really think through how I was going to address it, especially because I've just got so much food stuff in the house right now. Um, so I need to find a place to put the Bittersweet Certainty. I think I should probably put this in the librarian's quarters. I'll put this over here for now. Okay, so this will now be intuitions. Or hopefully it'll be intuitions. I may not have the space. Yeah. Okay, contradictions then. I'm not gonna have space for this one either. No! All right. Actually, I think I'm going to need to do another move in a little bit, but... yeah. Okay. Obviously, this is all going to be undermined if I... or when I get another another book in, but... all right, so... there we go. There we go. So if I get like another regret or something like that, it'll get in the way. But that gives me something to start with. Better now. All right, let's bring back the next health. It is spring, and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. And yes, we'll keep going. So if I had been thinking, I probably would have tried to drink a glass of water to restore an element of the soul as well. I guess I can do that with the whist, but I can't actually see a situation where I need that much whist. I think what I'll do instead, I think I will use the glass of water for the health. because that will free me up for the Faust in 50 seconds. Now, as far as what I was going to use that fear for, on my to-do list, hindsight, fear, stolen secrets, intuition, confounding parable. So I'm assuming this would be a scale moon. Okay, so I've got one for Hill and Hollow. But again, I can't see myself... well, we'll see what we get with Mr. Kill. Okay, so on the Affair of the Unfinished Lark, for 3 years, the sculptor adept Zuthimalim Zidane has labored out his masterpiece, an abstract sculpture that speaks with the voice of the desert lark, and now, puzzlingly and suddenly, he is dead. Mademoiselle Matutine sorry, why did I think that was Olympi? Hoped to complete Zidane's work, and at Hush House, or so she believed, she found what she needed to do so. Whatever Dr. Blackwood found at Hush House, it convinced her that Zidane had used Ys metal in his work. Now, Connie's thinking things over as far as her job is concerned. So, MCO Constance Lee, Connie has risen swiftly in the Suppression Bureau to the exalted rank of Constable Oculate Minor. Don't get in her way. I think I'll maybe invite her on a separate occasion. We'll still keep this... We'll still keep the... we'll keep the salon going without any extra work. I am, however, going to double check what the outcomes for the rose are. Did Daymare receive my invitation? Daymare, Grafin Federica, Dagmar, Sophia, Teresa, Helena, Begina von Nagelsberg. If you prefer, she doesn't. Did Limpy receive my invitation? Essayist, illustrator, critic, editor of the Carisham Review. Did Aladdin receive my invitation? The Alapine, historian, doctor, and above all, traveler. The good doctor has been associated with all but one of the libraries of the Watchman's Tree. He was even secretary nunciant of Hush House for a little while, but he has never been on good terms with the Suppression Bureau. And we have the final guest. Oh, I should be talking with Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill, Ryan Spry, doesn't mind stopping for a gossip. Zachary received my invitation. Marksman, detective, renegade. He has always been a quiet man, but since he left the Suppression Bureau, he has grown even quieter and terribly still, except for his fingers and for his eyes, always in restless motion. Now, it did also occur to me that... Yeah, I suspect we probably want to do this sooner rather than later. Because if we leave it too late, then... Yeah, picnics must take place before... Oh. Must take place before dusk in spring or summer with at least 2 guests. The more guests, the more successful the salon, but you'll need enough food and drink in the room for everyone. Maybe I shouldn't try messing around with the numbers too much. Okay. Let's take a look at the Egg of the Dune. So, Dr. Adim, let me just make a note here because I definitely forgot the last time. Okay, so Egg of the Dune... Vagabond wants to challenge Calyptra. Alliance with the Carapace Cross. Sorry, gotta deal with my laptop for just a second. I'm pretty sure I just wasted a whole bunch of time on an update that was completely unnecessary, but... Okay, so, the first thing is I kind of wanted to double check what the Egg of the Dune was, but I can get that without looking at the guests. So, if I assist Aladim... Dappled roses are a weapon against Calyptra, a weapon made for the Vagabond and her allies among the Hours. Now the Vagabond is calling on old alliances to strengthen her hand. Where his patroness goes, Aladim must follow. It worries me greatly, Librarian, dissent among the Hours, alliances with those who came before us, but she has been good to me, and I am loyal. I will help her recruit the Gladerflog kind to tend her gardens. Please, share with me whatever material you might have concerning Maya. Okay. Now, for some reason, I did not invite Aaron this time, which suggests to me that I made a decision that wasn't for the best. Assist Dagmar. Dappled roses are a weapon against Calyptra, a weapon made for the Vagabond and her allies among the Hours. Now the Vagabond is calling on old alliances to strengthen her hand. Dagmar finds it all rather smashing. Between you and me, Libsy, I've always admired the Vagabond. Doesn't take no for an answer. Makes her own way wherever she wants to be. Well, the Carapace Cross out in the ruins and Maya aren't signed up to the Vagabond's plan just yet. I'm hoping I can nudge them. Just need to gin up a bit on Maya first. What do you have? Okay, so... So I suppose if I'm pairing off these alternatives, I feel a bit better about Dr. Adim than Daymare. Wakefield is not one of the participants, so it's Madame Bichet. Okay. Dappled roses are a weapon against Calyptra, a weapon made for the Vagabond and her allies among the Hours. Now the Vagabond is calling on old alliances to strengthen her hand. Olympi would happily see Calyptra weakened, but the alliance with the Carapace Cross has her worried. The Vagabond is one of the Hours friendliest to humankind. If she recruits the Cross to tend her weapons, if she has less use for us, I fear she might become less kindly inclined to us. I would like to discourage this alliance, Librarian. Please give me anything you have on Maya. Okay. So, the answer, I think I'm going to go with Olympi on this one, but I don't recall if I have a book on Maya. Either way, I think I can go for the Salon. It's earlier than I was expecting. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to experiment. So... I'm kind of curious what happens when we cross over to afternoon. Yeah, so the little hour called Nons when the doors of the Mansis are most tightly closed. Actually, I should have been a little more careful on this because I've lost the opportunity to do rest and refreshment. But I will just keep carrying on and see how far I can push this. Okay, so with that sound, a little late. One does not picnic when it's too dark to apply jam without peril of jam-related accidents. Okay, so yeah, I think I'm gonna risk the... I think I've just signed myself up for more trouble, to be honest, but let's see how it goes. My guests settle down to a picnic. Keep an eye on the salon as it progresses. You will need to add soul cards to encourage the conversation to flow. Different guests will need different soul cards. The more guests, the longer the salon will last. My guests settle down to a picnic. Raise a complex question. Add a whist card. Well, happy I've got one of those. With Keeper level Sky, an Ascended Harmony might conjure a Daidumos. But not today. A bright and ringing music which evokes the blue sweep of the lower heavens. Dagmar and Aladim chat happily about Medina's quests of the rivers. Sorry, Queens of the Rivers. That was a rough... We know this from Cultist Simulator. It's the one where I struggle to pronounce all the European rivers. Better now. Alright, let's get that Faust back. I'm happy that we started off with the whist, though, because I only needed 5 for the salon. Conversation ebbs and flows. Invite a challenge. Add a metal card. So if I want, actually one thing that's worth noting here is that I have 4, so basically as the salon goes by and we use more of these cards, I know that I can afford to use a metal, a whist, and a tryst for other things now. Oh, and a fet. I think what I might do is I might take a moment and see if, so I was going to try and level up Hill and Hollow. Hill and Hollow needed 5 memories. I think we got a real shot of making this work. So, Stolen Secrets, Confounding Parable, and Contradict... Yeah, okay. So let's do some of the simple ones. We can do unhatched hymns. We can do something with confounding parables. I can never remember which shelf is confounding parables now. This one. So that's 3 of the 5 that we need. Contradiction. Now I do have the option of going to Crowcross Sands and the Moor as well. I think I'm going to prioritize the leveling up, though. So we move the contradictions. I think I'm on to... Actually, I think we're back to the indignities of those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of obliviates. As much as I just like reading that one in general. So we did the Savage Hymn, Contradiction, Confounding Parable. Stolen Secrets are technically something that I can get from Mr. Kill, so I think what I'm going to do instead, I am actually going to go to Crowcross Sands here. And my reasoning is that I'm going to be able to get an element of the soul before the day is over anyway, and I also have the outside option of using an earth sign. So let's do some beach combing. I'll use Rhyme and Remembrance again. And we know that we'll be able to level up Horns and Eye. Wait a minute. Hill and Hollow. In time. Olympi is pressing Connie on the suppression, on the suppression by the Bureau of recordings of Veros opening the sky. Connie evidently enjoys fencing with her. There were good reasons. This is an interview, Olympi. A lot of questions for not an interview and so on. Although when Olympi mentions the word Chandler, she becomes a little testier. Let me just, I want to read these incidents again. So, Dagmar and Aladim chat happily about Medina's Queens of the Rivers. Olympi is pressing Connie on the suppression by the Bureau of recordings of Veros opening the sky. Connie evidently enjoys fencing with her. There were good reasons. Is this an interview, Olympi? A lot of questions for a not an interview, and so on. Although when Olympi mentions the word Chandler, she becomes a little testier. Let me just make sure that I don't have any empty slots. So yeah, so 34 seconds before the next phase at the Sweet Bones. Reason discussion. Raise a complex question. So this should also be the indicator that I can get by using the FET at the Moor now. Gather in spring, the gorse is bright on the land's nape. I deserved a little quiet time. So now, if I want, I can either start making some more ingredients using my health here, or I can start doing the various types of gardening. I think what I'll do is I will draw something up out of the Hush House well. I think we only need 2 of each now, so that should free up another metal, an Arab, a Tryst, and another health. So this health will be used to level up the Hill and Hollow. I mean, really, at this point, I should probably just get one of the memories that I need for... No, actually, that's a pretty easy one. I'll just read Derasha Quercum when the time comes. Okay, so if I'm feeling particularly bold, I can try reading the Viennese Conundra right now. Oh, hang on. I've already read it. So I'm going to go to Ava's desk just to find out. Instead of doing that, we'll use the metal here. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. So this will be to shelve it properly. I also forgot that I have... So it's a bit of a tight window for this, but... Open... Did a bit of a weird lineup here with the Arab and Trist because these are not going to make me money. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales? Well, who'd listen? So this paid off with the Coffin Maker's assistance. We now have all of the memories that we need for for Hill and Hollow to get leveled up. So I guess the question is, do we keep bothering Mr. Kill? Do I try and get some eggs? Do I try and do something else with the talk verb? I don't hate the idea of getting more eggs. Offer this beast my company. Who knows? Perhaps it will offer something in return. Zachary unself-consciously recites a poem in progress to Aladim, a clashing fortress of peace. He beats out the rhythm on the tabletop. Aladim tentatively suggests a refinement, which Zachary judiciously accepts. So I'm a little curious about this. I've never really drummed my hands on the table, although I'll confess I like some poetry. I wish I had a stronger grasp of it than I do. But I do notice that there are a few references in this game to like beating a rhythm on the tabletop. And this is the sort of detail to me that like this really strikes me as a detail that comes from personal experience. So there's a reference, this is the book with Little Sophia. In Book of Hours, this is the book with Little Sophia, although there are other references in Cultist Simulator. But so when you play a Lantern Long, when you play the when you're following the I think it's the Enlightenment victory, the path, you will one of the signs of sort of your progress is your skin starts becoming looser. And one of the marks of your ascension is sort of indicated as your flesh being able to sort of move over, a certain joint. Let me see if I can find. I am actually amused by this. So there's AI generated response right at the top here. While there is no specific mention of flesh stretching over a joint, lies. Anyways, so I can't remember which finger joint it is, but I know the origin of that particular story apparently came from the writer of the game sort of just reflecting on the flesh of their own hand and sort of taking that idea and pushing it a little bit further. And, you know, that's become... So you get this idea of sort of a Lantern Long, sort of the skin sort of hanging loose over them as they sort of become this more, I don't know, intangible or less physical. Well, I guess that's kind of equivalent. But yeah, it's just it's a memorable image. And again, one of the challenges that Book of Hours can potentially run into is to explain this world to an audience that won't necessarily be familiar with Cultist Simulator. From a sheer financial standpoint, this is a smart idea because I believe this game cost considerably more than Cultist Simulator to make. And so, the expectation is that there's going to be an audience commensurate to the amount spent. So in this case here, you can't just say, see Cultist Simulator for explanation. And so some of these ideas need to creep into the game, but they need to come into the game in a way that makes sense to people who are not familiar, but they don't come off as this tutorial for something that people may have spent a considerable amount of time with, someone like me, although frankly I wouldn't be that bothered by it. So what's kind of neat here is some of the new books will actually make references to things that exist in Cultist Simulator, and they sort of fill you in. So in the case of this hunting manual from Little Sophia, she refers to the marks of ascension, and in that case, the specific stretching of the skin past a certain finger joint is referenced inside there. And the reason why I mention this is that there are definitely moments, and the author of the game has been pretty open about where these influences sometimes come from. So talking about, you're sort of playing with your hands at one point and you notice something and then you just sort of push that to another extreme to represent something inside the game. That's a neat little trick, one that, you kind of, I don't know, for me at least, I kind of hope that I would be so clever to take my own experiences and make them so memorable. But then there's also, this isn't present inside Book of Hours, but in Cultist Simulator, there is a sequence, there's a dream where you're in sort of this museum, and it describes a number of sort of different curios. And there's a reference to a koi geometry, and that is, there's a Twitter thread where the author actually points out all the things on his desk at the time. So the koi geometry awaiting my touch is, how kids will do these little, they're little diamonds, and they've got like numbers on them, and you open and close the number of times that somebody's picked, and then you open, once you do the little routine of opening and closing and picking one of the numbers on the inside, you open the flap and your fortune or whatever comes out. So that was the koi geometry. There was the storm in the tin, a back of a can of compressed air. Was a box containing spring, I think, was one of the transit cards. Was it tools of measure? So like little rulers and things like that. But yeah, anyways, so it's this interesting description of like a museum in a dream, but it is quite literally just a description of a bunch of stuff on a desk in terms of where this stuff came from. So it's not even necessarily that because I know this stuff, I'm thinking of this here, but there's the description of Just Verse. So Christopher Allopoly's unsuccessful book of poetry, and I think it's a pretty clear suggestion here that he was inspired by The Radical Measure. And the description of the poetry is that it's really not that great. And I think the suggestion from the way I read it, now it could just be that the book isn't very good, right? There are cases where there can be authors that you really like who just simply don't produce a work that works for you. And this will be true. Like there's, so like I like the films of Andrei Tarkovsky. Not necessarily all of, like I don't like them all equally, but in one case, I actually rather liked Andrei Rublev when I watched it. I know someone who does quite like Andrei Tarkovsky, does not care for that film. And, to a certain extent, I don't understand that position because I'm like, I remember really liking it. And in another sense, I also know people have very different opinions of movies. So there isn't a mystery. but yeah, for me, like I definitely know that um or so my suspicion here is that it's not Justiverse is not just like a failed book and it doesn't have information worth. Hey, Tiberiosity. No worries. It's pretty quiet tonight, but I always appreciate your lurk. Beat Space Marine, congratulations. Oh, I didn't know it was a Buggy End boss. I did watch. I've been a little more quiet just because I don't get to commit a whole lot of time to streams lately. So I've just sort of poked in when you were playing Space Marine. The Space Marine 2 you were talking about, I believe, because that's what you were playing most recently, unless I'm completely losing it on the series. I've never played either of them, so okay, cool. I was like, pretty sure it was number 2, but I don't want to be telling you what you've been playing lately, obviously. They seem pretty good. Yeah, well, I definitely spend more time than I need to at work. So they do actually take the time. This is one thing that's nice about my job is that they do actually take the time to say, you don't need to be here past the normal hours. So you'd like to move from in the field. What do you do in the field, Tiberiosity? Are you with the RCMP or something? Um, but what was I going to say? Anyways, so the impression that I get for Just Verse is that it's doing sewer and drain service. So the impression that I get with Just Verse is that it does not work by conventional measures. So this is actually, I relate to Just Verse to a certain extent because I really like just like the visual arts, but also for even more recent poetry, I kind of appreciate that the weird structures or, not following the sort of things that I associate with old poetry is not just the sign of decay, right? It's not easy for me to follow and I don't entirely get it and I sometimes wish I did, but it's not necessarily the case that it's not good. And so in that case here, it's like, okay, well, whether or not Alopoli was successful in what he was trying to do, there is ultimately another goal that's being attempted. So when they talk about, the rhymes being contrived and so on and so forth, by a conventional standard, it's not working. But the hint is, of course, that you do find yourself sort of tapping your hand with the rhythm. So there's something working sort of underneath. And so again, it's a type of poetry that maybe can only be appreciated by initiates, or it's something that works. This is something that comes up, I think, even in Book of Hours, but this idea of things that sort of work. Yeah, actually, they talk about it as you run your hands along the weave in a Kilisimi text, a certain understanding starts to creep in. Or is it the book? Actually, it may not be. It may also be the book where it's one word. I think I was mistaking two of them. I think that book that I described is actually the one where it's the same word on every page, but as you read that word, the understanding creeps in. I think is the one that I was thinking of. But yeah, in any case, the idea of Just Verse I always take as it being successful by the standards of what Alopoli was setting out to do, as evidenced by, the compelling material inside of it. But by the standards of a poetry book, it doesn't work. But again, because we keep coming to this image of sort of tapping, beating out the rhythm on tabletops, I kind of wonder if the writer of this game does that when they read poetry. I'm actually doing. I'm reading it's kind of a course on writing rather than a book on writing. It's an associated workbook with it. And they're actually talking about rhythm. It's not really about poetry, but it does talk about rhythm. And it's the one thing I've never been able to do well. Like I'm familiar with the concept of meter, and yet for some reason I am just not able to think in an intuitive way about the about meter, like just in terms of words and stresses and all of that. It's just something I kind of take for granted. I don't think about stresses, and if I consciously think about stresses, I normally get them wrong. So I think the lesson here is I'm not going to be a poet. Conversation ebbs and flows. Instinct and emotion at a tryst card. Zachary shows Dagmar a tanglebrag he's made. He tries to explain how it portrays and betrays the paths of his future. She tries to understand. So we haven't had many encounters between Connie and Zachary, even though it did tell us that there would be potentially future developments. Unhatched hymns, hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next. Madrigad to Watchman, Watchman to Wolf, and so on. I should actually mention, too, that Solfeia also works a serious job, but it's a serious job that does, I believe, allow her to sneak in some, at least, audio for Book of Hours, although I know also sometimes you'll be playing Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm assuming that you're not at work when you're doing that. The Hymn of the Phases celebrates the Meniscate, from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The Hymn of the Reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of Shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. Well, I definitely lose you as a viewer then if you were listening or playing Baldur's Gate 3 while at work. The Serenity of the Black Wood, an allegorical history of the House of Leith, which it is here implied was inspired by the centipede. Serrano Blackwood is an occult alias to this day. The proverbial Footloose gathers travelers in the wood and leads them through, but abandons them part way. They find themselves beset by glorious monsters. The travelers discover they can survive if they close their eyes. They adopt a closed eye as their sign, and that they can go unnoticed if they drink from the clear, cold streams. They never forget that proverbial Footloose the centipede, but they never forgive her either. So, there's the confounding parable that we need. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviates. It is not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance of the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The Glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenience for the Oblividiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I have already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny. Which, incidentally, as fun as this is to read, is in fact a... this does give you a hint, right? So, Glassfinger Toxin... actually, I don't remember if Glassfinger Toxin works with Ragged Crossroads, but I am curious. There is no way I'm going to be able to find out. Interesting. Oh my goodness, Vesper. I was debating on wrapping up just because it is quite late for me, but I will happily host your lovely people. I can't remember if you were doing a demo or if you were doing something else tonight. I did see you were streaming, though. But how are you doing? Hello, Vesper people. I think most of you know me, at least as the one who always talks to Vesper about the best president ever whenever he comes in. Hello, Silver. How you doing tonight? Yeah, no worries. And I'm not going away right away. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, host. How are you doing tonight? What were you playing? And finally, inject a little gaiety. Add a core card. So what I'm going to be doing here is when... I mean, at this point, I probably should just be able to throw in every element of the soul. So let's go crazy with the health. Can I use Crack Truck? Oh, right. Hang on. It's spring. Huh. Shout the grapes down. Oh, that's right. You were doing 3D modeling. Oh, wait a minute. Was it 3D modeling, or was it 3D as in you have a 3D model for your VTuber avatar? Sorry, I'm only just catching up now. Bees, like librarians, are not to be trifled with. Honey or beeswax, if I'm careful. I can't go gardening during the salon, so... Actually, let's just hang on to one of each of these things, just in case. Oh, fair enough. I will, by the way, for those of you not familiar with this game, I am going to review everything that was talked about in the salon because I sort of messed up on the... I think we're at the point here where I can start making some money. I did sort of... I just talked a lot between things, so... Oh, very nice. I actually didn't know that you did 3D modeling, Vesper. Okay, so I believe we're at the end. Dagmar has decided to lecture Connie on overreach by the Suppression Bureau and its European cousins of the duties, citing arguments and precedents from theology and natural philosophy. Connie is mostly listening, mostly patiently. Okay, so I'll take a quick minute here just because it's been a bit of a rambly and like it's been a journey, let's say. So for those of you, I'm actually, so out of curiosity, is anybody here unfamiliar with House of Light? Because I know Vesper Fortune has done, sorry, House of Light is the expansion, Book of Hours is the base game. But Vesper Fortune has done Cultist Simulator. And this game is a follow-up to Cultist Simulator. But I never really know if people are coming in because they are curious about the game and they're hearing some guy just rant about, you know, mysterious topics that mean absolutely nothing to them. Or if, when we talk about Book of Hours, people are already sort of familiar with the game and what it's about. Because I'm actually happy to do a more comprehensive introduction to the game, but if people are already familiar, that's probably not a great use of their time. Vesper says, the program did a lot of the work for you. Most of what you did was the texture work in other art programs. Ah, yes, so you're obviously a huge fan of Adobe, and I bet you pay for like the everything edition, and you also get an extra license for Substance Painter, and you always talk about what a great company it is. I know artists love Adobe. I'm gonna make... I'm in this... Vesper is a very long-suffering viewer and streamer. Because I don't think I've ever come into his stream and not said that sort of stuff. Okay. Hey, Beth Kinda Sorta. All about the mysterious lore. But yeah, so... a quick, for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with, also, hello. Those of you who aren't immediately familiar with this is a game where you sort of restore and maintain an occult library. We haven't actually opened up all of the rooms in this particular playthrough, but we're making some progress. So we are a librarian of what's known as a Library of the Watchman's Tree. This is a role that actually has a very special significance in the world of the Secret Histories, the setting that this game takes place in, and as does Cultist Simulator, the game that came before it, and The Lady Afterwards, which is the tabletop experience that was also released as part of the series. Haven't actually played it, but I now have a copy. So one of the features that was added in the new DLC is the Lighthouse Institute, House of Light. And one of the things that you can do to sort of advance your goals towards founding the Lighthouse Institute is you can invite people into the library for a salon. And in this case, we're hosting a picnic in the Physic Garden, but you have a few different rooms that you can host things in. There's the Hall of Voices, there's the Refectory, there's the Hall of Division, there is the Gulskrai Logia, which has, I'll probably invite maybe the Kills over or something with that. And what else? I feel like I'm missing one. Oh yes, of course. The Chapter House. Excuse me. So they added cooking, but the biggest one was that there's the opportunity to sort of invite people back and see their interactions. So there's this whole process of figuring out what you want to serve and who you're going to invite and so on and so forth. And there are advantages that this event will sort of confer on you. But sometimes it's just fun to find out more about the people participating. So the people that we invited: MCO Constance Lee. Connie has swiftly risen in the Suppression Bureau to the exalted rank of Constable Oculate Minor. Don't get in her way. Mademoiselle Olympie Bichet, essayist, illustrator, critic, editor of the Karashim Review. Dr. Ibn Aladdin, who is somebody who actually has a Wikipedia page. The Alapine, historian, doctor, and above all, traveler. The good doctor has been associated with all but one of the libraries of the Watchman's Tree. He was even Secretary Nunciant of Hush House for a little while, but he has never been on good terms with the Suppression Bureau. Also, what pie are you trying to make, Vesper? I actually don't think I've seen you play this. Are you enjoying House of Light on your own time? Mr. Zachary Wakefield, marksman, detective, renegade. He has always been a quiet man, but since he left the Suppression Bureau, he has grown even quieter and terribly still, except for his fingers and for his eyes, always in restless motion. And finally, Daymare, Grafin Friederike Dagmar Sophia Teresa Helena Begina von Nagelsberg, if you prefer. She doesn't. And also, this name sort of implies a very high-class individual, but her talk, the style of her dialogue is actually anything but. Oh yes, the Unnied Ambered Honey Pumpkin. Yeah, so it's the specific pumpkin you're looking for is the one. I'm convinced that there's got to be some way that you can get the I guess it's the Blomberende to infest the pumpkin with honey. I just haven't figured out how to do that yet. Anyways, so what happened at this salon? So Olympie is pressing Connie on the suppression by the Bureau of recordings of Vero's Opening the Sky. Connie evidently enjoys fencing with her. There were good reasons. Is this an interview, Olympie? A lot of questions for not an interview, and so on. Although when Olympie mentions the word Chandler, she becomes a little testier. Oh, I've made the pie. Honey-haunted pumpkin pie. Harvey Haddington, perennially suspicious of the Blomberende kind and their cuckoo honey, nevertheless championed pumpkin pie made with cuckoo honey as the herald of savor. Moth, nectar, scale. Edge, forge, heart, knock. Pudding, main course. The final boss of pies, somebody said. Zachary unselfconsciously recites a poem in progress to Aladim, a clashing fortress of a piece. He beats out the rhythm on the tabletop. Aladim tentatively suggests a refinement, which Zachary judiciously accepts. I think I actually missed an earlier... Well, I think we've lost it to time. Zachary shows Dagmar a tanglebrag he's made. He tries to explain how it portrays and betrays the paths of his future. She tries to understand. Dagmar has decided to lecture Connie on overreach by the Suppression Bureau and its European cousins of the duties, citing arguments and precedents from theology and natural philosophy. Connie is mostly listening, mostly patiently. Crack open the container, delight in your discovery. A basket of onions, the prima materia of cooking. This may be why the cosmos is shaped so like an onion. The Viennese Conundrum of Vandriel describes odd events in Vienna, the disappearance of children, epidemics of parasite activity, animal mutilations, nightmares of worms, the activities of a charitable organization, the New Legions, that funds the burial of the poor. She proposes peculiar connections between these activities. When the individual K attends the meetings, black dogs are sacrificed and quartered. When the element M is in attendance, black mares are found with their throats slashed. I propose that these sacrifices are not necessary, but that our Legion friends may consider them fitting. Herewith, diagrams of the mutilations. Medusa's riddle, then, I choose to render as what is not seen. There is another riddle, this is definitely fear, one that I have heard rendered as what may be lost. I will delineate some historic attempts to answer it. These are in themselves, in some sense, sacrifices. Yeah. So now I know why that book was set aside. And, interestingly enough, that's beside Medusa's Lament. Funny how that works. And now it suggests a meal would be welcome. Do I have any? I guess I do have grapes. Feed the beastie. Satisfy this creature's appetite. Food will make a hungry beast or a wild one cooperative. All right. Still trying to figure out this pumpkin business. I'm ready, but for what? So the funny thing about this one is that I know it can't be spicing that that works here because there's no mystery, like the baking a pumpkin pie, or sorry, like there's no ingredient, or sorry, no recipes that I'm missing here. I think I can actually make a similar argument with the knife now that I think of it. No, because that doesn't have crafting. Okay, fair enough. Actually, I wonder what would happen if I put pentiments and precursors there. Sea-strewn, salt-snared stuff. To the bridge with you. Okay, I'm ashamed to admit I forget what I got out of that package. The guests leave happily. You've gained an additional potent memory. Good lord, what is wrong with me? Oh, actually, one thing I can do now that we've got these items, we have... Just want to double check. It is indeed Hill and Hollow that I need to level up, so... Hill and Hollow, Fear, Stolen Secret, Savage Hymn, Confounding Parable, and Contradiction. Throw whatever health we can at it. Or I guess I can use the Tryst. At last, I am something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. And what I guess I want to do right now is to find as many 1-minute things that I can do that are at least somewhat productive. So... I think the Glassfinger Toxin requires a liquid. Yeah. Mind you, but that's going to take more than, yeah, so that's going to take 90 seconds. So, okay. I'm going to focus on making an Amethyst Ampule then. This is Secret Threshold, so that's not the one that I want. Oops. Horns and Ivories, also a Secret Threshold. There we go. If I had a liquid, theoretically this will do. Yeah, I can make another Iotic Essence, which seems... Oh, 90 seconds. That was a dumb move. All right. That's fine. We won't have it for the following day. But I'm wondering if I can somehow do another Amethyst Ampule. And for door and wall, that's not enough knock. Okay. I think in this case we can take the Whist with Sights and Sensations. No, we cannot. But we can take Quenchings and Quellings to make... Wait, it's the same problem, but... I'm actually willing to do that one because I've got more than enough Whist. Okay, what else can I do? Again, this is really more about finding somewhat... I wonder if I can... I'm not so sure. I'm not sure how I feel about committing so many elements of the soul for the next day, but I'm gonna commit to it just because I'm not 100% sure what else I kind of want to do with the day. Okay, this gives me a start. So there's a couple of goals that I have. One, I want to find a book on Maya. Two, I want to find a book to give to Connie. And then I want to deal with these new lessons that I got. So Daymare, Zachary Wakefield, Ibn Aladim, Madame Bichet, a lively salon. You've held a lively salon. This marker is to remind you that you can't hold another one until next season. A wild surmise. Interesting. Eyes open, skies open. Satisfaction. Edicts Liminal. 2 Edicts Liminal. Preliminal Meter. Resurgences and Emergences, and Path and Pilgrim. So, this is worth taking some time to figure out. So Hill and Hollow should be on its way up. Now that's going to be going into Birdsong. So the next one at a higher level for Birdsong is Wolf Stories, which would give me 5. I need 5 scale and Moon. And then Path and Pilgrim wants 6 scale and Rose. So the good news here is that we've kind of got Path and Pilgrim accounted for. If I want Preliminal Meter will also work for Path and Pilgrim. So that's actually a little tempting to start pushing that. Yeah, I think I'm going to start pushing Path and Pilgrim up. In fact, I may have enough to be able to level it up tonight. So Path and Pilgrim's at level 2. So in order to do that, I would need a scale and I would need a rose. So I can get the rose from the occult scrap. And I guess if I have to, I could use the earthquake name because I can turn that into an earthquake later. Or alternatively, I use, actually the earth sign's the smarter call here. Okay, so knowing that, I'll go back to Ava's desk to read Durasio Quercum to get the earth sign back. Now, Stone Stories wants Scale and Nectar. But given the fact that Wolf Stories Wolf Stories is kind of already on the way to with the Horns and Ivories. So I think I'm going to commit. Yeah, I think I'm going to level up Wolf Stories with this. We'll level up Path and Pilgrim with these 2. Now, if I had a big moth one, that would make the most sense, I think. But I don't think I do. I also don't think I have much in the way of knock. So the ones that I wrote down, we've got for Birdsong, Wolf Stories, which would require Scale and Moon. Path and Pilgrim would require Scale and Rose. Menascate Reflections are Edge and Forge. Stone Stories, Scale and Nectar. Tradiz Mahaira has Grail and Moon, so I can use the Resurgences and Emergences on Tradiz Mahaira. And then Edicts Inviolable has Heart and Moon. Finally, Abelbright Euphonies, Grail and Sky, and Rhyme and Remembrance, Moon and Winter. So not a whole lot to work with there. I guess I technically don't really need to work through a lot of this right now. So this isn't committed yet. That's actually a little surprising. It turns out it didn't hurt the Salon anyway, but okay. Oh, the other one that I'm not thinking of right now is with the moth side. I could actually use that to level up Inks of Revelation. So I think I need. I think what I'm going to do first is I think I'm actually going to commit the stuff that I can. Or, well, let's wait till we level those up. So Applebright Euphonies is the next level for the tree. So that is a slight argument for resurgences and emergences into Bosk into Applebright Euphonies instead. Preservation needs Menascate Reflections, but we don't have what we need for that. Birdsong, we just finished Hill and Hollow. Path and Pilgrim. No, sorry, it's Wolf Stories next. So we're sort of already on the path there. Horamachistry, we are now up to level 6. So that was Sacralamea. Now we actually only need 1 for that. So that could be something that I put Edict's Liminal in. And then Drums and Dances, which is actually quite low, so there's a couple of arguments for me to try and work on that. Okay, so let's say this is for Sacralamea. Ithistry, I think my plan was to get Spices and Savors in there. And then Pyroglyphics. But Pyroglyphics is not that high. Okay. For Skolacosophy, it was going to be Rhyme and Remembrance. We are ready to go with that now, but I have plenty of work to do with Rhyme and Remembrance, and of course it's one that wants Moon, so that's going to take us a while. Nyctodromy, I believe I can finish whenever I want, and Hushery starts at Inks of Revelation. So there is sort of an argument for me to throw the moth in there. Okay, I mean, it wasn't where I originally thought this was going to go, but I think I have my plans for the day. I'm not going to be able to do this all today, so I'm just going to set this aside. We, again, have more than enough on our plate. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. So I'm going to see if I can keep the Wild Surmise. It's interesting that Adim keeps the Visitor on these two, but Wakefield doesn't have any of these. Okay. Little water splashes on the stones to nourish... stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. Let's see how many of my elements of the soul I lose tonight. Skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. So there's the Hill and Hollow, the ways of the Hill Children and the gods from stone, old paths, old secrets, the songs that still echo beneath the earth. Okay, let's look for... I think it was Path and Pilgrim I was looking to move up. So we're going to use 2 of those, so that's eventually going to be level 4. I'm no expert, but I am no dabbler either. So both the earth sign and the occult scrap are relatively straightforward for me to get back. I'm not too worried about using those. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. A full belly makes a helpful friend. This beastie is now inclined to cooperate. And we have another amethyst ampule. This is largely replacing the one that we already used, but I guess if I'm replacing the one that I used, I should probably put it back down in the foundry. And again, for the stuff that takes 90 seconds, I'm expecting those to be lost for the morning, but we have more elements of the soul than I really know what to do with right now, so I could have been making some candles too. So I'm slightly curious in this case. I've got a soft amber pumpkin and an amber pumpkin. So now I'm wondering if I take pentiments and precursors and I take the pumpkin here and maybe the cuckoo honey. It was worth a shot. I'm really trying to think how I go from amber pumpkin to soft amber pumpkin. Because so far as I can tell, yeah, can't throw the pumpkin at the hive. I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually. Yep. More grapes. Derashu Quercum. In English, the title translates roughly as The Account of the Oaks, but this is Nathaniel Darcy Evers' fascinating, if haphazard, survey of the occult properties of every tree he can find, not just oaks. In Persia, Taxus Picata, the yew is called Sorkdar, which is the red tree. There they had long understood the Grail root. In later times, the great king of Pontus had beehives set in the branches of the oldest of the female trees. The berries of the Pontine yew open the door to death, but the honey of their flowers opens a different door entirely. This was not the great king's Mithridate, but one who has suckled at the great yew fears poison no longer. Perhaps they should. Nathaniel is here distracted, however, by the toxic properties of certain inks. He does mention usefully that the minor ink of power Ugol can be brewed through the rites of the roots with the assistance of the aspect nectar. Alright, daybreak. Memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. And again, a bunch of elements of the soul will take a while to come back. Let's think about how I'm going to make the most of the day. So, the most sensible thing for me to do right now is to level up what I have available. So we're going to need to get the wolf stories up higher. Right now it just requires 2 though. So we will bring this up to level 3. So for that I need a moon or a moon or scale. Sorry, 2 moon or scale. Actually, one of the first things I'll do here is take the Arab to read the paper. So that's going to get my occult scrap back. So the ideal for me would be to get the wolf stories. So we want wolf stories, we want Path and Pilgrim, and we want, I'm actually going to use health for that. So Wolf Stories, Path and Pilgrim. Sacralamea, and Applebright Euphonies? Maybe not. Sorry, Inks of Revelation. So this would probably be a call for bringing in Mr. Kill, but I don't need to... I guess the other question is, we do have some scale that we can work with the miner. Okay, so looks like I've got, is it 314 scale rooms? Yeah. Okay, so let's take a minute here to think about how I can move things up as far as scale goes. So they should start with 2. I can verify that with the hiring text. Yeah, scale, forge, and a little moon. So we can give them a tool for 1. That brings them up to 3. If I give them my health as it currently works, that brings them up to 4. Now in terms of memories, I do have the earthquake name now, so that's a fairly powerful one. So that's worth 6. So that brings it up to 10. So at that point, the question really is, how do I get the remaining 14, right? We've got the 14 for the sealed vault, 14 for the slithering fountain, 14 for the mazed cell. Now, egg croquettes, I seem to recall, had the scale that I needed. But then probably so does beef. I guess the only thing here is that the beef just costs me money. So... seems kind of funny, but this actually probably is the most sensible way for me to... Oh, actually, I don't need to get that clever. The Pilker... Nope. It's only 1 scale. You say you'd love to live in Hush House, but also stairs. I love stairs. I always take stairs. Not a fan of stairs? Okay, so this is converging more and more on me ordering a whole bunch of beef, which I'm completely okay with. A lot of stairs. Okay, so yes, it looks like my simplest option here is just to feed the miners some beef. Better that I get that done now rather than wait on it. So we've got 2 from the roast beef. Domain Reveille, nope. So I'm guessing probably it's Strathcoyne whiskey that we're looking for here. So 2 Strathcoyne whiskey and 2 beef. Actually, let me just double check that. So it's 1, 2, okay, 3. That gives me something to work with. So, in spring, the local miners often travel to the Feast of Lights below. If one breaks his journey for the at the Sweet Bones, a shilling will buy his labor for the day. Now, let's get ordering. Okay, so all of it's TRN. Get ourselves an extra Strath coin. I want to just triple check. So scale here, 1. So it's 3. I'm probably going to order 4 just for safety. Now, I'm actually going to change my plans for the day. So I'm going to set aside... Okay, so Horns and Ivories, Path and Pilgrim. So this time I'm actually going to set aside a Fett for Path and Pilgrim. For Inks of Revelation, we can set aside 2 no, I need 1 Faust. So 1 Faust, 1 Trist. Okay, Wolf Stories, Path and Pilgrim, Sacralimea. Okay, another Trist. And, okay, Inks of Revelation. So one thing that I can do here to make my life a little bit easier is I can try and bring in all the memories that I don't need to worry about the... so anything that the miner's not going to give me, I can sort of train in right now. And I actually think there may be some value in just trying to knock this stuff out sooner rather than later. So for Wolf Stories, this one's a pretty straightforward one. We really just need a moon and scale, and we have that through the Earth Sign and the Old Wound. Oh, but we have 30 seconds, so never mind. I will read the relevant books then. So for that, let's go for some of our old favorites. We will read Singlefoot Songs for the scale, and get a Confounding Parable. Wrong one. Still wrong one. There we go. Okay, so Path and Pilgrim, that needs Rose and Scale. So I think at that point, this is where I kind of, my hand is forced and I do actually need to use something like Fear. So in this case, we'll go for Fear and Intuition. Not my favorite choice, but it's one we can work with. So we use the new Fear shelf. Actually, we're going to do this in reverse order. We're going to read Medusa's Lament this time. So that was Fear, and then Intuition, which we'll use Nona's Desk for. Where was it? We just reshelved these. Actually, the contradiction is also one that I can work with. Yes, contradiction will still work. So we repurposed the confounding parable to Path and Pilgrim, and then the contradiction can go to Wolf Stories. Okay. Sacralamea is actually a tricky one. So that... I need the music, but the music we've actually already sort of accounted for. So maybe let's just leave that one aside and ask about the Inks of Revelation. So that one has a couple of easy ones for me to work with. Also, I can get my Fosk back and just use a Whist. So Glimmering is the obvious one for that because the lantern it gives me. And then the music, oh, sorry, we're talking about, okay. Well, we're actually at the point now where I'm running out of desks. So let's go for some music. That'll help with Sacralamea. I think I can use my Shapt at Natan's desk. So we'll use the Beguiling Melody for that. Right, yes. And I've used up Solomon's desk with my orders, but I'll take it. Oh, and a cloudy day, so that'll help me with the wolf stories. Carefully mark the creamy paper. You can never have enough desks, man. I don't want to order another desk, but I'd like another desk. Mind you, I'd also kind of like a nicer place to live first. Alright, thus they more or less ruled themselves with the help of their wild Celtic temperament, made wilder by the hardness of their lives and the truly ghastly conditions under which they worked. With all this, it is not to be wondered that the Tinners acquired a reputation for being scarcely human, but it must be remembered that among them at all times were those whose characters could stand comparison with the best of men. I am ready to lend my limbs, boosts heart, scale, and nectar. Now we can definitely afford to make some money at the Sweet Bones, so we'll do that. So again, 4 beef, and then we'll put the order out. With Keeper level Winter, Solomon's preparations are a precursor to the Great Ink Nillikant. With Keeper level Forge, Iotic Essence is the precursor to the Great Ink called Orpiment Exultant. With Keeper level Lantern, it can become Xanthotic Essence instead. And with Keeper level scale, not Lantern, an old moment can lead to an Earthquake name, which is exactly what we're going to use that for. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot that we had some books to catalog as well. Oh, nuts. I messed up. Okay. Craft an Earthquake name. Discern a potency of scale. We'll wait for the desks to get finished, but we will catalog the Dawn Period books. All right. This is going to the post office. And for 108, we're almost certainly going to have to use the £1 note. Post a completed TRN order form. Complete the order. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use the wild surmise for, but I think I might just hang on to it over a couple of nights. I know at some point I do actually need to start using these things, but nothing's history when it first happens. Okay, let's figure out what I want to do. So we were going to use Trist for Wolf Stories. We were going to use Fet for Path and Pilgrim. We were going to use Whist for... Nope, that doesn't work. Trist for Sacralamea. 2 Whist for Inks of Revelation. I am reasonably happy with that. I think I can also afford to go to the Moor. Remembering that I don't want to... I don't want to run out of elements of the soul for... to generate the memories that I need. I'm not going to rely on the miners to give me what I need. Okay, what do I want to use the consider verb for right now? I actually think I'm okay jumping the gun and using the earth sign with wolf stories, because I believe I can repurpose some of these. So I am no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. The postmistress signs and seals the order and places it in the place that stamped orders are properly placed. Wait 3 days, she commands. All right. So I'm going to give the earthquake name fairly early. We'll work alongside each other. This is just to avoid any duplications. I can discuss a memory with my assistant. This will use up the memory, but boost the assistant's abilities for the rest of the day. While I do that, I'm going to pour the whiskey. Serve appropriately. Pour out. Poured out. I am slightly inclined towards some gardening right now, but I'm going to wait till I have a slightly more secure position in terms of leveling things up. Actually, I think I can afford to at least do the grapevines. I think I'm gonna drop some water too. And then I guess the question is what I want to do with flowers. I'm not so sure about that. All right. Let's figure out where we're at. Singlefoot Songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Swashan, near the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the Grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests causes harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoot sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found this last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. So the Savage Hymn, I think, is for Path and Pilgrim, but I'll want to double check that. The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence, but there are hints also that he misses those years and the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. That's this one. The Locksmith's Dream in Cursus, the fifth and final volume of Teresa Galmier's notorious work, which began as an examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans, but became an account of her own occult journey. This volume was apparently never published, nor allegedly even written, yet here it is. The law goes all the way back to stone. The keys cannot be held or owned. This had, I believe, the unexpected consequence that those outside the law may hold and own them, but even they cannot keep them. And of course, a key is no more physical than a spirit, but a spirit may be housed in a body, and I have touched a key with my own hands. So the Legions hold the keys. I had thought the Legions only old and powerful transgressors of the crime of the sky. But I begin to understand that the crime of the sky is more even than it seems, and why a twin, who unites what is not to be divided, might accept Elysian as her name. So this was originally going to go to Pathan Pilgrim. The Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Olapoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name of Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Olapoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good, certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear the stream of eyes. We have agreed to part almost amicably." Olapoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of the old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. Medusa's Lament on the death of the hour called Seven Coils, the father of the mother. For the first part of the poem describes the ambush of the Seven Coils by a warrior scarred all over by the traitor gods, scarred even unto his eyes, so that the sight of the great coils would not destroy him. The battle rages on until the Seven Coils drowns in its own blood, at which point the narrative turns mystical and elusive. The seven-titled goddess arises from the foam of its blood. She is an armored queen, a serpent daughter, a key, a healer, a murderess, an oracle, but her seventh title is not to be revealed. So we'll move the confounding parable up here. We'll keep these fear. De Bellis Mirorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Solipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. Now, unfortunately, this one I think I messed up, and I should have used with wolf stories. So too late to use this. The 2-1 joined and the horn distinguished, consequently blood. And Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of oniric irresponsibility and confined to the cucurbit. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation, and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone, but the dreams keep coming and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of oniric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brankrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their finger bone. So that's going to go to the Inks of Revelation. So let's just take a minute and figure out where we are with our goals here. So, we'll use the Fet with the with Path and Pilgrim. We'll use Tryst with Edict's Liminal. So Edict's Liminal requires 3 more memories. So let's say 2 Shapt and an Arab for that. And then for Inks of Revelation, I suppose in total we're going to need 5. So Whist. I was trying to think why I would want a Fost again, because I'm actually already making the Earthquake name. Sorry, it's not 5 that I need. Yeah, so we have 1 of the 5, so we actually just need 4. And I'm a little reluctant to do it, but let's use one of the Fet here because I value the core and the health for other purposes. Okay. This gives me something to work with. So first of all, let's catalog some books. Catalog a Dawn Period book. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's Dawn Period, sometime before the end of the first millennium, commonly reckoned. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. Books from this period are sometimes contaminated. And we can do the same at Caller's Desk as well. Now, let's think about... So we've got what we need here. Let's get the 3 that we need for Sacralamea. So we're on the hunt for Sky and Moth. Stolen Secrets, I don't think helps me here. Impulse will, though. So now I just need 2 more. And actually, Solace and a Storm should do the trick. Where'd I put my Storm books? Okay, so the last step, we want Moth and Lantern books to work with. So we've already got the impulses. Doesn't help. Intuitions doesn't help. Patterns doesn't. We're already working on the Storm. Intuitions doesn't help. We already have the Fear. Regrets. Contradictions. Foresight does work, though. I think I'm on to Bancroft Diaries here. Okay, so that's the first 2 for Inks of Revelation. Now we need the remaining 3. Nope. going to start with letters to my successor. And I think that's it, unless I can get something fun from the different films or music. No, we're good. All right, well, that's at least a start. So I think the rest of my time is going to be really spent on tending to the work. Oh, sorry. I also want to restore my earth sign. We'll worry about that later. All right. We want to level things up. So Path and Pilgrim gets another... Hey, Benito! It's been a while. Thank you very much for the raid. Now, I gotta ask you... Oh my goodness. I got this wrong. Okay, so Savage Hymn, Fear, and I guess we'll use the Confounding Parable now, which gives me another thing to read. So hello, November Luna. Hello, Benito. Now, are you familiar at all with Book of Hours? Because if not, I think this is a fun little... this is actually this will be a fun little item to relate to your game. Okay, so are you familiar with The Kitchen Garden? You watch Sweeps play. Excellent. So Sweeps is a wonderful broadcaster who I'd like to watch do more Book of Hours, but I know she has lots of other games that she plays. Okay. So there is a beehive. Bees, like librarians, are not to be trifled with. You can use beeswax to make candles. It begins as a flower. Not only that, but there are a couple of books related to bees. So we have got The Beekeeper's Ends, dialogues with bees and uses for honey, as erratically recorded by Ricardo Milagro, gardener of Hush House in Musgrave's time. But on top of that, this is one that... Oh no, we have read this one, so never mind. That gives us impulses. We also have... Oh, do I not have this? Surely I have it in my inventory, though. Astonishing. Okay, well, this is going to be one of the rare times that I actually invoke... Actually, I don't need to invoke the... I don't need to invoke the wiki. I can use the Rowanarium. As long as I find it. Sorry, 1 second here. Where is it? Honey, the Comprehensive Guide. Description: Harvey Hattington, pilot, polymath, confectioner, writes with great enthusiasm about the marvelous work of the bee. And then when you read, for those of you not familiar with the game here, when you read a book, you will get sort of the first passage basically after your first minute of reading it, and then you get the second passage after another meeting. So the first passage is, Hattington insists that all the primary aspects, nectar, scale, heart, lantern, moth, grail, are possessed by bees and expressed in honey. Clearly, he points out, there are only 6 primary aspects, as a honeycomb has only 6 angles. And then the second passage, Ugal ink is prepared with these techniques, but so is Skinshuck mead, and only Skinshuck requires honey. Just as any beverage or foodstuff can be improved with the addition of honey, so any garden is improved with the presence of bees, even those bloody Blumberendi. So, you've come to the right place, Benito viewers, and thank you very much for sharing your audience with me. I definitely am streaming much later than I had intended. I'm probably not going to be streaming that much longer, but we will enjoy our time together. And for those of you who are wondering what the hell I'm going on about, what nectar and all of that stuff is, there is no way that I'm going to be able to explain the setting to you in this period of time. But I will highlight that some of this madness that you have been listening to actually is still related to material inside the game. So, for instance, we talked about this book. I was just, doing a fun little bee-themed. I'm also happy to note that longtime viewers are already familiar with this, but I changed jobs at the start of this year, and I found out that the place that I work actually keeps bees. And what they do as part of the sort of a charity drive that they do every year, they also sell honey from that beehive at the bake sale. So I was able to get, way back in January, I first found out about this and this sounds wonderful. I totally want to get myself a jar of this honey, which is hard to come by. They actually limit it to, it's first come, first serve, and you only get one jar per employee, and they still don't have enough for everybody. So I'm pleased to report I have it back in the kitchen. I haven't tried it yet, but anyways. So obviously, with a name like Benito, I need to point out the many bee references and many bee activities that you can do inside this game. However, one of the best ways that I can describe this game and why it is so interesting is all of the different connections that you get to draw. So here we had the Beekeeper's Ends, dialogues with bees and uses for honey as erratically recorded by Ricardo Milagro, gardener of Hush House in Musgrave's time. Gardener of Hush House, you say? Well, what happens if I look at the description of the garden? Kitchen garden. In 1652, Musgrave de Wolf caught a traveling peddler stealing vegetables from his garden, an eccentric wanderer who went by Ricardo Milagro. Musgrave's ancestors would simply have hung the fellow, but Musgrave decreed 7 years' service in the garden instead. When the 7 years were up, Milagro had proved his worth as a gardener and chose to make Brandkrug his home. The grapevines here are cultivated with rootstock he carried in his pack. And there are a few other references, so there's more that we can learn about Musgrave. I believe there's still a bit more that we can learn about Ricardo Milagro. But really, this game, if you ever heard of Cultist Simulator, you know that it's a roguelike and it is not that forgiving to the player. And so this game sort of is an effort to be a bit of a counterbalance to a game like that. This is much more relaxed. There's no real way to sort of get an involuntary ending. And instead what it allows you to do is go in deep. And one of the ways that works is you kind of get to... Well, you get to stop and smell the roses, quite literally in some cases, because you can also do gardening. But it also just gives you all of these little threads. So, not only are you playing a game in which you are restoring and maintaining an ancient occult library, but you are actually having this experience of going and looking at all of these different rooms with their history and just learning a bit more about what's going on. So all of these busts we placed based on some of the information that we learned inside of the game. And so again, even when I do something a little fun and just say hey, you got, bee in your name, we know the, well, not just bee in the name, but bee emotes, bees all over the place. Part of the fun of this is we do get to say, okay, well, yes, we get to do the fan service. Yes, we get to talk about bees for a little bit. But on top of that, this actually has some significance in terms of who Ricardo Milagro is, what the Blumberendi are. In fact, the Blumberendi are kind of what allow us to use the honey-haunted pumpkin pie. Incidentally, Harvey Hattington shows up again. Harvey Hattington, perennially suspicious of the Blumberendi kind and their cuckoo honey, nevertheless championed pumpkin pie made with cuckoo honey as the herald of savor. If you'd like to know more about Harvey Hattington, I think we've got a couple of his meringues sitting around here somewhere. I'll save it for another time, maybe, just because we're short. All right, so I have to get something for Edict's Liminal back. Let's go... let's go get a Confounding Parable. And I've lost track of what memories I'm getting. Okay, so this I think is Impulse. This is Solace. So that's 4. This is a Storm, so that's 5. And I only need 5 because it's Sacralamea. Good lord, I am being very silly right now. Okay, here's what I'm going to do to try and make up for a couple of these blunders. I'm going to, when I can at least, try and get another Earth sign. I think I've used up all my desks, though. Yep. All right, memories don't last long outside books, but it's made a difference for the day. Let's have a chat with the miner about the serpent-styled glass now. Carved snakes writhe down the frame. A prominent inscription reads, "To the librarian Gervinus in earnest of our wager." I can lend my assistants something to help, increasing their abilities. Help with letters. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers through the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, normally I was just going to run a bunch of whist through the sweet bones, but now I'm just going to sort of turn it off and turn it on again. I'll work and restore, and that's just because I have a fairly tight requirement on what I can do with these remaining elements of the soul. So we'll get our big dump of memories. We'll see what we can do with the existing lessons. The skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. Alright, so I believe it's, I've done an element of the soul, a memory, and a tool. So from there, I think it's just the... So they should be at 10. Yep, so we feed them the whiskey and we feed them the beef. Roast beef. Our fathers of old were robust, stout, and strong, and kept open house with good cheer all day long, which made their plump tenants rejoice in this song. Oh, the roast beef of Old England and Old English roast beef. Henry Fielding, The Grub Street Opera. Enjoy. I can offer my assistants something to eat. This will increase their aspects. It's also just friendly. The green jasper tablet, supposedly copied from a tablet of green jasper which serves as the covenant stone of the monastery of the Fifth Cup, the token which gives that library shelter beneath the watchman's tree. So this has keeper skin. This is going to require 7 nectar to clear out. And it's not just 7 nectar, but it's 7 nectar for a corruption. So I can't remember the... Okay, actually, with herbs and infusions... which has a wonderful description, by the way. Pluck it, powder it, mix it, warm it, drink it. But not that one. So this has 5 nectar and can remove corruption. So in this case, we just add... Really, we could add the earth sign if I wanted. Or I could use my health and an impulse. Not something we're going to do today, but definitely we can get rid of this corruption without too much trouble. And the Vinzant inscriptions, Everett Vinzant transcribed these from a cliff in Anatolia, where he famously survived a lightning strike. He died 7 years later to the day. His bones, legend has it, were hot to the touch. Now, I've been pretty careless in terms of where I've been putting my unread books. Yeah, so I think for this one, I'm just gonna... I need to find a better room to put my to-read list. But again, I'm filling the house full of cooking stuff, so I... Ugh. Just feels wrong to put books in the phonograph, so I'm not going to do that. I think at this point, I'm going to... Yeah, I'll just put it on the shelf. And I do eventually want to make this a proper like bookshelf for the library, but for now, we just keep it where it is. All right, what do we have? We've got 21 seconds before I get my remaining memories. I think in this case we'll just run out the timers and see where we're sitting for the rest of these. I do want to get the Earth sign back, but I don't need to rush it too much. We've got plenty of time in the day. All right. A vase of gorse, as Cornish a plant as any. So I seem to recall we used this. It used to be on the shelf here, but let's see if we've got... You know what? Make the picnic table look nice. Sea-strewn, salt-snared stuff, so always welcome. Pilchards are always welcome. It's a little more scale food for us. We can make things with them. I guess I'm putting you on the shelf here. Pickle them alone, or they're pretty good on toast. A true and complete accounting of the Asclepian Mysteries of the Roots of the House. Descriptions of the Asclepian Mysteries produced by one Riley Gress from supposedly a much older text. It's unlikely to be genuine, but it makes reference to the house without walls and its wood right there in the prologue. This is very obviously not an antique text. At the very least, it has been badly mutilated, but it contains substantial intriguing material, especially a persuasive comparison of the house without walls, without doors, to the human body, with its many portals. The direction of death is down, the book explains. The peacock door has been considered a rent or an abrasion, but in some respects it is more like a mouth, if not a more treasured point of entry. Discussions of the doors include a rite which may conjure creatures through those doors, although key incantations are missing. So there's the impulse for what I originally thought would be Inks of Revelation, but we'll maybe double check that with the memories we have. The Orchid Transfiguration's Noon, the third volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is in the original Latin. A long dialogue between the Mountain Mother and the Vigilant Storm describes the ways in which both mountains and storms end, and the protections they use against these ends. But we must use the knife, said the Lion-throned one, the noose, the flame, the waking word against those who have passed the three-valve door. And so none may pass, that is our law and the law of the sun. Solace, peace after trouble. Apollo and Marsyas, the libretto of a lost opera concerning the contest between Apollo and Marsyas and its tragic outcome. The librettist is identified only by their initials. In the original myth, Marsyas lost the musical contest and was flayed by Apollo, who later regretted it. In this version, Marsyas' skin has a further history. The skin of Marsyas gives oracles and is later smuggled to Phrygia, where the priestesses of Cybele use it for a drum. At the climax, the striking of the drum drives would-be violators of the priestess to suicidal madness. The opera ends with a wistful hymn from the youngest priestess on the beauty of mountain pines. Letters to my successor. Advice from Gervinus van Loren, 11th librarian of Hush House, to the one who will come after him. Some of the advice is practical. Don't worry about losing the house key, always close the seaward windows, make sure you feed the cockatoo. Much more of it is rarefied, specifically about the Inks of Revelation, and some of it relates to Van Loren's own doom. When I was another, I made a foolish wager with the hooded princess to solve 7 riddles. I had not realized the riddles would be set for me by the one I would become. 6 are resolved, the 7th will be the end of me. It waits now in the cellar of the jail, where Collars still believes I can keep it confined. But the first riddle told me I would not see the second dawn. Some truths come to us from outside or above. Bancroft Diaries. Lord Franklin Bancroft was initiated into the arts of the flower maker by the Rose Witch Fiona Ayrshire. He rose to become a society provider of occult services and secret pleasures before his abrupt disappearance in 1790. Bancroft seems to have been a talented adept, but devoted his energies to frustratingly whimsical projects, arranging grape-fetching races between Mansis spirits, teaching percussagants to juggle, and conjuring storms of imaginary blossoms for the Rose Witch Ayrshire, who resolutely refused ever to couple with him. Bancroft spends 20 pages bemoaning this last. The mantra here recorded is a high and exacting magic, which can be used to pledge one's spirit to the watchman, beginning an ascent to the house. Bancroft boasts of his ability to recite it when in his cups. He also had it set to music for a performance with fireworks at Vauxhall Gardens. So 4 of the 5 that we need. And the snare of the tree collected proverbs of Aunt Mopsy. Once in the wood we call a visit, twice in the wood we call a journey, thrice we call coming home. Every timber has its knots, the straight and crooked both. Every weave is more absence than thread. You can't keep nowhere out any more than you can keep somewhere in. When the cuckoo learns the nightingale song, our sleep is sweeter than honey. Sorry, I forgot to read the second part of that. All right. So we're talking about improving Sacralamea. I'm going to just double check my plans for the run here. So Sacralamea needs to be level 6. So yes, I do need 1 more level for that. My options here are Moth and Sky. Now the catch here is that I also need Moth for Inks of Revelation, so I'm going to be unhappy no matter what. So Sacralamea, Confounding Parable Storm, Solace, Cheerful Ditty, Beguiling Melody, and the lessons. Finally we apply our Tryst. I don't know why I put more than 1 Whist aside. Oh, because we have 2 levels of Inks of Revelation. At last I am something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. Okay, so let's move along. So Resurgences and Emergences, we'll use the Impulse and the Revelation. Edict Liminal, we've got the Bittersweet Certainty, the Foresight, and so it's really just a question of what Moth or what Moth or Lantern what Moth or Lantern, words fail me, what Moth or Lantern memory I want. In this case I'm going to go for another Impulse just because it does give me a chance to actually read the Honey Book. So we'll use the Vagabond Desk for that. Do I not have Vac yet? No, I do. Sorry, not the Honey Book. The Beekeeper's Ends. Okay, so that covers me for Inks of Revelation. I also want to replace my lost Arab. So for that, I think I'll probably use the Tryst. We'll do that at Ava's desk. And then from there, the core and the health can be used for gardening. So I think I'll get another Moth Orchid. And I'm debating between a pitcher of... No, we've got more than enough water. I don't know if I have enough cat's claw. Well, cat's claw or not, I probably should still be getting the grapes. Oh, yeah, I'm definitely drawing up enough water. Alright, better now. So we'll keep earning money at the Sweet Bones. The sustenance has boosted their aspects appropriately, so final step, we will talk with the miner about... Or not talk with them about, but we will serve the Strathcoin whiskey, which I could have just left on the table here, but now I actually have to search the house for the glass that I poured. Where there it is by the meringue. The collector has collected a distillery, it seems. I can offer my assistant something to drink. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how today turned out. Let's put the Honey Scar teapot. Man, I've got a lot of that. I don't think there's room here. Yeah. This'll have to do. That is just going to blend in. I'm going to forget that that ever existed. Ah, well. So yeah, this was kind of a silly use of the core, given that the... Pluck grapes from the vine. Given that we already have a pitcher of water, I didn't really need that, but that's fine. And we've got our new earthquake name. Speak half a syllable and feel the beast stir half a coil. So we're looking pretty good. I'm probably going to do the same thing with this miner for the next couple of days. So, I mean, the real question here is which room I want to open. I can open the Slithering Fountain, I can try and open the Mazed Cell, or I can try and open one of the vaults. I think I'm going to keep the vault for the end. Not so clear to me that I get anything special by the Slithering Fountain. I do get a workbench, I suppose, with that. I think I'm going to open the Mazed Cell first, and then we will focus on the Dawn Period again. So in 6 seconds, I need to make sure that I use the Resurgences and Emergences to level up the Inks of Revelation, otherwise I'm going to duplicate the Impulse and lose it. The skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. So, Inks of Revelation, Resurgences, Emergences, Impulse, Revelation. Use the Wisp to level it up. Sacralamea, the rites of an order of immortals who have tried to remain apart. Those rites touch on secrets of hours and on secrets of hours of the Mantis, chiefly gods who were flesh and gods from light. All right, so we've got 14 with the miner. Again, the real question here is, do I try to use them for memories or not? At this point, we have everything that we need for Edict's Liminal. So in this case, and we're going to keep the Wild Surmise for tomorrow. So in this case, we will open up the Mazed Cell. A leathery burgundy mesentery has spread out. Out of and around the doorway of the cell. Chitin, fungus. It crumbles beneath my hands, emitting choking fumes. It'll be impossible to enter the cell without clearing it. So that'll take a minute. Hello, Vanguard Master. I'm actually wrapping up in just a little bit, but I hope you are doing well tonight. Has been appallingly busy at work lately, but I assume that is probably the same for you as well. Okay, Wrapped in the King detailed accounts of secret bacchanals and ecstatic dances observed in necropolises and graveyards in southern Europe, in Egypt, and in Anatolia. The author is a self-confessed ghoul, an eater of buried flesh. He claims to have witnessed the dances while at his feasting. The dances draw from the traditions of the mysteries of the cults of Isis and Sybil. Of Isis and of Sybil, but include both symbolic and literal flayings, and the human heart is always central in the rites. The author punctuates his accounts with queasily sensuous descriptions of his own interrupted feasts. At these greater feasts, a black pig is always crowned as king before its slaying. On this occasion, its heart was weighed in the balance against a knot of feathers, and its skin became a cape for the officiant. Its flesh was left for the crows, but I must confess my interest was not in its carcass, but in the perfumed flesh of the milliner laid fresh in the earth. Doing well, just doing bug fixing. Or was, you're about to call it a night. You're actually home as of 2 days ago, and it seems that you'll be home for 2 months. It'll be nice to be able to rest. Excellent. I don't know how much of that time you want to spend on development. I know probably you've earned a bit of a break from that too, but one of the reasons I haven't taken a break at work, despite having a bunch of vacation time banked, I always kind of want to take it at a time when I think I can get something good done. And I kind of know if I do it right now, I'm probably just going to waste the time. All right, the skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. The Beekeeper's Ends, dialogues with bees and uses for honey as erratically recorded by Ricardo Milagro, gardener of Hush House in Musgrave's time. Milagro spends an entire chapter on his hatred of wasps, which he describes as the vile pretenders. Milagro claims that bees retain many traditions passed down from earlier and greater branches of their species, but that they are fiercely jealous of these traditions being passed to lesser insects, and insist above all on an oath of secrecy. Tragically, therefore, he is unable to describe these more substantial and powerful traditions. And one thing that I'm not making very clear out of this, just because we've read these a few times, but they have added a feature in the game here where it will tell you what skill you earn from it. So in this case, we got insects and nectars, although we're really using this for the impulse right now. Okay, cool. Yes, I will get in touch, Vanguard, because I know things have gotten really busy for me lately, and I'm probably going to be doing some travel reasonably soon, but that doesn't mean... Essentially, I want to make sure that if I can put the time in, I want to do so. And I figure at the very least, I can tell you whether or not I'm free. Okay, so our last skill up for the night, more Inks of Revelation. So, Impulse, Foresight, Bittersweet Certainty, and the Edict's Liminal. Why on earth am I using the FET? Another fruit plucked from knowledge's tree. Alright, now, for the remaining steps, let's get some more grapes. Oop. Oh, right, that's the vegetable, not the vine. I still think it's crazy that you can actually use Crack Track to gather. And then I don't recall... Okay, so Crowcross Sands is... Okay, both of these are free, so... Let's take our old friend Path... Well, we can use Pentiments and Precursors too. The gorse is bright on the land's nape. You don't need to stop shamelessly plugging. You're welcome to go ahead. I don't know. I mean, I know I've played Total War on stream before. I don't know how much overlap there is with the Secret Histories audience, but I'm always... you know how it is, right? I hang out in the local game dev scene. One of the original reasons for that was it was just a good... I mean, it's how I found Cultist Simulator, right? Just being willing to check out new things and share them. So I always like being able to to look at new stuff and share it with people. I'm just very, very tired, so I know I'm not the best hype man for people's games right now. Skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. All right, so let's take... I'm actually going to take a minute here just to rearrange a couple of things. So I'm not going to commit these to the Tree of Wisdoms yet, just because I think I'm going to wrap up for tonight. It's very late, so I'm going to feel rotten at work tomorrow. But on top of that, I've actually hit the 3-hour mark, which I wasn't expecting to. So let's go to the Tree of Wisdoms and compare where we're at. So for Birdsong, we can start at 5. So the plan for Birdsong would be Sky Stories at level 5, which we have. Hill and Hollow at level 6, which we have. Wolf Stories at level 7, which we do not yet have. That's at 3. So we're now on to 4 Scale and Moon for Wolf Stories, and I can actually just move that up. So I'm trying to keep the notes reasonably up to date. Okay, so for preservation, I want to take Menascate Reflections and then move up Stone Stories, Treatise Mahaira, Edicts Inviolable, and such. So that isn't realistically an option with the memories that I have right now. Applebright Euphonies was another one that I was going to try and bring up. But again, I used the memories for something else, so not so clear to me that I can do anything with Bosk. And then Skolakosophy, I do have the option. The first one that I was going to put in was Rhyme and Remembrance, so I could have used that for the moon. But I think it's better that I just go back to my main list here. So Wolf Stories is the big block right now. Path and Pilgrim's also eventually going to get to level 8, so that's also going to take some effort. What I am going to start doing here is just making some notes. So Hill and Hollow gets a dot beside it because it's ready to go. Sky Stories gets a dot by it because it's ready to go. Okay, so Horamakastry, we want to put in Sacralamea at level 6, which we just achieved. Drums and Dances at level 7, that we don't yet have. So, and if Drums and Dances has to be level 7, then that's going to be that's going to be 5 Heart and Nectar, I believe. Yep. All right, so for Ithistry, which we unlocked, we can take Spices and Savors. Now this we can actually put in at any point, but there is a bit of a strategy in terms of breaking up certain memories during Numa. So I do want to keep a few uncommitted skills at higher levels. But Spices and Savors is ready to go. The next one that would move up would be Pyroglyphics. So that's got to be a level 6. So we need 4 for Pyroglyphics. I'm also out of space, so I'll leave that aside. Skolakosophy, we already said that I want to start with Rhyme and Remembrance at level 5, so that is a Winter and Moon test for me. Nyctodromy, we need Edict's Liminal at level 8 and Coil and Chasm at level 9, and I believe we have both of those, yes. So anytime I want, I can finish the last of the Nyctodromy. And finally, Hushery, Inks of Revelation at 7, and then Glass Blowing and Vessel Crafting at 8, and Quenchings and Quellings at 9. So we have sort of two intermediate requirements. So the question is, what do I do with all this? It's all well and good for me to just have these details running around, but there's got to be a point to these investigations and what this really is right now. So one thing I'd kind of like to do is get, in a perfect world, basically have 5 of every element of the soul. So 5 Arab, 5 core. So core is Birdsong and Preservation. No worries, Benito. I'm actually wrapping up myself. But thank you very much for the raid. I hope things are going well on your side, and I hope to see you in your channel next time. I've been I'm like a write-only streamer right now, so I think it is wonderful that people are still showing some support. Anyways, have a lovely evening, and thank you again. But yeah, so because most of the salons that I want to do will have 5, potentially 6 encounters, the ideal, of course, is that I would have 5 or 6 of each of the elements of the soul. Now that's a little bit extreme, but what I will say is that because core is one of my lowest level elements of the soul right now, I only have 2 of them. There is some sense in taking Birdsong and Preservation for the start, because they will give me that'll give me more of what I need for those encounters. Excuse me. And then similarly for Arab, that's Bossk and Skolakosophy. Faust would be Ithistry and Illumination. Shapt would be Nyctodromy and Skolakosophy. And then from there we would be moving on things like Fet Trist, Metal and Whist. So you can see, or at some point I should probably put health in that list as well. But again, I have no shortage of things that I can do. The question is just what's the best order? What's going to get me the biggest long-term advantage? So the Vinzant Inscriptions, this gives me Transformations and Liberations, which is a Forge and Moth text. So the first thing that I could think of here would be Meniscate Reflections with its 3 Edge and Forge. I do have the option of doing Inks of Revelation, but remembering that if I put that into Meniscate Reflections belongs to Preservation, which means that I'm more likely to get that core. So that's a tempting one to do. We have the Morphe Codex, which is Tridesma Hydra. That will give me Moon, so that'll help me out with the wolf stories. Crossing to Noon, same idea. That's Grail and Moon. Wonderful Shape is more Tridesma Hydra. Intimations of the Skin is Desires and Dissolution, so I think that is also Grail and Moon. Yep, lots of Grail and Moon. Calcite Supplications, more Tridesma Hydra. In fact, one thing I might want to do here, so this should be 1, let's guess here, so 3, 5, 7, 9. So I have up to 24 for like Grail and Moon things. I think there's a pretty good argument for me to just start chowing down on books on this shelf. So I don't really have a whole lot of use for the Vincent inscriptions right now. I guess I'll keep it here. But in terms of books that will potentially give me something that I can work with, so we've got the Morphe Codex, which gives me Tridisma Hira, so 6 moon is nothing. 8 moon, I think, for the same reason. Yeah, so we can go up to 10 moon plus the memories and such. So moon, no problem here. 10 Grail is an interesting question. I think that might be a bit of a challenge for us. So we can get up to 8. Nope, we're still there. So use the core with leaves and thorns and then a memory. We have the wonderful shape, intimations of skin, leaves and sorry, did I say core? I meant Arab. Intimations of skin, same story. Well, both of these are the same. So for 8, it's just a question of leaves and thorns and an Arab. We don't have a use for actually, sorry, that's not entirely true. This would give me Meniscate Reflections. So probably the combination of On Imperfections and Vincent's inscriptions would help me out with leveling up Meniscate Reflections. Geminiad Volume 2 would give me 2 Grails, so that's helping me out with Tridisma Hira or Applebright Euphonies. Observations on the Peacock Door. That's a moon one, so again, given how many things that I want to level up that have moon, no real question there, and then exercises in the continuity of the self, I need a total of 3 Rhyme and Remembrance, which is moon and winter, so this would get me 2 of the 3 that I require. That would clear me out through my existing, I haven't touched stuff on this shelf yet, shelf, and then we can move on to the really tough stuff. So like the Radical Measure would be an example of one that I'm actually not quite sure whether or not I can read that yet, because we have 5 rows. Yeah, 5 rows is my highest. So I need to find another 5. That's not that hard. So we can get 7 from Arfet, 2 from a memory, and 1 from a globe. So we're fine there. One last thing I'm going to do, sorry, I said I was going to wrap up and now I'm like half an hour in. I am going to take a quick second here and read the descriptions of each of these books at the top just to see if there were any obvious Maya candidates. So, The Wound Wounds, a history of 100 wars, sewn into design of metallic threads that pursue itself across every page. The Carmine Petal, Unexpurgated, a project proposed by Lionel of the Society of the Noble Endeavor, by which he claims he succeeded in creating a sanctuary for a fugitive forge name, the Unexpurgated version. The Sevenfold Slaying of the Seven Coiled, an account of the destruction of a primeval hour, a god who was stone. Exabalix, a grim treatise on those feasts that occur, those feasts that are not to be witnessed, the origins of hours. The sage and ecstatic Soham, a frequent visitor to the Mansis, claimed to have discoursed with the beach crow in person. Soham later insisted on sky burial. The Songs of the Carapace Cross, Micah Z, sometimes called the Mages of Courts, or possibly Micah Kai, etched this work in acid on stone. It has been reproduced many times in many languages since, but the reproductions are often lost to landslides. The messenger awaiting her destination, Limian Burzgash, records his prophecies of a city unbuilt and entreaties to its herald. A History of Inks, a legendary grimoire of exotic ink-making lore. The cover and some of the pages, unfortunately, are stained and crusted with something more like mucus than ink. The Descent of the Shell, a treatise on eggs, light, and optics by Abbess Melissenth, dazzlingly illuminated with renderings of the Abbess's visions. A Book of True Blood, Cassius the Tomman reveals the deeds of the unnumbered legion, the secret army that protected Rome against the shadowless empire. So with our Edicts Martial, we should be able to read that. Encridion Tragularis, a poison manual of the Order of Assassins called the Traguleri. I don't know if I've ever read this one. Secret Colors, Black Ellie, disgraced Damascene matriarch of the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot, wrote this while fleeing the agents of the Duty. The 3 and 3 Vatican manuscript, church-authorized version of an older text. This book describes the Chancel and the Calyptra, 2 triads of hours with subtle, far-reaching powers and responsibilities. It has clearly been reworked to fit church doctrine. Deaths and their evasions. Father Stanislav John Schaller writes of the means and limitation of passage between the orders of the Mansus. No long names ours. Unusually, Father John has written this book in Fucine for, he says, especial secrecy. A manual for departure. The author, who identifies itself as the Jekadu, claims to be one of the great hooded princes of the land of the river. The style is informal, even chatty. Inem Kepinglingpur Garki Krippus, in which 4 enigmatic figures tell stories they've heard over the years at the Roost, the secret location where the aviform hours congregate. Opus Magnum Carulium. Ambrose Westcott used to render this title of this venerable and anonymous work mockingly as The Big Blue Business. A kinder translation would be The Great Work in Azure. 26 Enticements, 7 Torments. The painter Niels Friedrich Malsker notoriously attempted a series of paintings based on the torments. By the 5th torment, the demands of the painting had grown so dire that he died of blood loss. The diagrams in the text are thankfully less detailed. Each Flame is Fuel, a work by Omar the Blaze, an initiate or craftsmaster at the Labyrinth of Lions. The manner in which the alchemist was spared. In 1782, Anil Verdier used this text as the basis for a presentation to the Academy of Sciences in Paris. He was executed in secret the following morning without trial. The Deeds of the Scarred Captain, painstakingly assembled by the soldier of fortune and sometimes remittance man Pavel Shulga during his years in Greece. In Memory of Gods, the Barrow Child, a nameless Gaulish adept who joined an organization identified as the Ordo Lamea, writes regretfully of the destruction of the gods who were stone, the hours who preceded humanity. The Chandler's Wish formula and instructions invoking moth, lantern, and exceptionally, paradoxically, the liminal and theoretical hour called the Chandler. The author is anonymous, admitting only that they are one who is not yet nameless. The Red Book of Brittany, a volume of inklore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman Conquest, and 2 copies of the Radical Measure. The Radical Measure Manifesto for Experimental and Dangerous Sounding Invocatory Poetry, written in sometime in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel, a notoriously inconsistent and incoherent text, apparently produced in a tearing hurry. And the Radical Measure, the original Radical Measures, was a manifesto for experimental poetry with occult properties, written in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel. The original is notoriously incoherent. Much later, Christopher Olopoli took on the task of editing and glossing it. He has taken some liberties, but the updated version is generally well regarded. So nothing directly related to Maya there, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something inside the text. And Book of the White Cat, or... Okay, so let's find a 16 to chuck things into. I organized in the wrong direction, but that's not going to be that hard to deal with. Okay, Book of the White Cat gets shelved here. Don't really have a destination for the Matter and Deeds of Serpents yet, but the nice thing is we're going to be able to distribute these books through the library pretty soon, because I think one of my plans, I think in the next stream what I'm going to do is I'm going to start... I'm basically, so I'll probably start by committing the relevant skills to the tree, to the Watchman's Tree. And then what I will do is I'll make a judgment based on how many elements of the soul that I have to be able to like generate the memories that I need. And from there, I'll probably read more than one text at a time. So we'd read something like the Morphy Codex. Well, actually, what we'll do is we'll read the Morphy Codex and the Vincent inscriptions kind of at the same time. And we'll just we'll move along that way. Because I can try and work out a perfect plan for all the lessons by the, just try and make it so that I have the least amount of downtime possible. But what that means is that I spend extended times on pause coming up with plans where I really don't need that much. I really don't need to do that much effort. So all of that, though, is going to be something that I handle on Wednesday. Hopefully when I'm a little more coherent. So thank you everybody for watching. I'm going to see if there's anybody online. But I also need to bring up the homepage. So, Kilgore Trout is online, and we can raid him for... He's currently doing Thief Gold. I believe he's done this a couple of times before. But Kilgore's kind of a neat streamer. He does... Yeah, no worries, Vanguard Master. Thanks for hanging out. Good luck with your upcoming beta test, and I do hope that I get a chance to help out, because I know how helpful it is. I just need to somehow figure out how to get enough sleep, because clearly late streams like this are not helping. Anyways, Kilgore's a neat streamer. He does tend to play classic games on original hardware. So he has a couple of old systems set up, whether it's like an old God, what is it? The MMX or something like that he was saying. Anyways, he's got like an old Pentium or whatever. So, I mean, I'll still use DOSBox on some things. Like, there's obviously quite a bit of variation in terms of old PCs, but it's kind of neat to see somebody play the stuff on classic games. And of course, he just likes talking about what it was like to play the game when it came out and what his what the game means to him and things like that. So he's always a good one to host, particularly if you like classic games. If you, for some strange reason, want to still watch my stuff, I'll be back Wednesday, and we will be continuing this Book of Hours playthrough. But until then, take care and enjoy Kilgore's channel.